Chapter 17:21. From the bottom of her heart, she really hoped that he would wear the suit that she had personally picked out for their engagement ceremony and appear on such an important occasion. But she was afraid that he would feel that this suit was beneath his standards. She did not expect Wuxia to agree so readily. Okay. He agreed so quickly that she found it hard to believe. You agreed so quickly? Yun Shirshir was a little overwhelmed by the favor and looked a little surprised. Why? Wuxia adjusted his tie in front of the mirror and smiled deeply. Wearing the suit that Madame personally picked out for the engagement ceremony is more meaningful, isn't it? Do you like it? Yun Shirshir wanted to test his feelings. After all, she hoped that he would sincerely like her taste. I like it. Really? Yes. I like it very much. Yun Shirshir's eyes lit up instantly. She looked him up and down and was as happy as a little bird. He nodded and said that he liked it. To her, it was the greatest affirmation. As long as you like it, what's important is that it suits your feelings. I'm very satisfied. She held his shoulders again, not allowing him to object. Looking left and right, she was satisfied no matter how she looked at him. So good looking. My hubby is really a clothes hanger. No matter what clothes he wears, he looks good. Wuxia had the standard golden body ratio, which made her extremely jealous. Suddenly, the two of them smelled a burnt smell from the kitchen. Yun Shirshir's heart skipped a beat and she was shocked. Oh no! Oh no! Wuxia's expression changed as well. Yun Shirshir anxiously rushed to the kitchen, opened the oven, put on a pair of gloves, and took out the cheese rice. The burnt smell became more obvious and pungent. She frowned, only to see that the cheese rice was burnt. Clearly, the baking had failed. She was instantly annoyed. Wuxia walked into the kitchen and also smelled the burnt smell. He frowned suddenly. It's burnt? Yun Shirshir held her forehead in frustration and nodded. Wuxia glanced at it. The baking time had exceeded and the rice was already burnt. The two of them looked at each other. A question suddenly popped up in Yun Shirshir's mind. Who did you inherit her cooking genes from? A good cheesy rice was actually burnt by them. It looked like the two of them did not have the talent to cook. You must have gone through a genetic mutation. What should we do? Wuxia asked. Yun Shirshir was confused. Why was she blaming her? It was obvious that he wasn't attentive and forgot the time. If you weren't in such a hurry to get me to try on the suit, things wouldn't have turned out this way. When he said that, Yun Shirshir realized her sin. She immediately lowered her head guiltily, like a child who had made a mistake. She stood there helplessly, obviously feeling very guilty. I didn't do it on purpose. She was so focused on the suit, admiring it with satisfaction that she forgot that there was still something roasting in the oven in the kitchen. Wuxia couldn't help but blame her. Little rascal, it's all your fault. Tell me you ruined my supper. How are you going to make it up to me? Yun Shirshir felt even more guilty. She couldn't help feeling guilty when she thought about how he had been in meetings for so long and how his supper was ruined because of her. Chapter 17:22. Wuxia chuckled inwardly at her guilty expression. He inched closer to her, grabbed her chin, and whispered, What should I do? Have you thought of how to make it up to me? His warm breath brushed against her cheeks without any restraint, and her little face was so hot that it was as if blood was about to drip from it. There seemed to be an indescribable aura of a tiger eyeing its prey from his body. He was like a lion that had locked onto its prey, forcing her into a corner and controlling this narrow space, causing her to feel even more inexplicably flustered. Yun Shirshir carefully looked up and sized up his expression. She pursed her lips but didn't dare to look into his eyes. How do you want me to make it up to you? Tell me. He was determined to let her do as she saw fit. Yun Shirshir thought for a moment and gave him a fawning smile. How about I make noodles for you to eat? There were still some ingredients in the kitchen, so making a bowl of noodles should be a piece of cake. Wuxia, on the other hand, had obviously gotten the wrong idea. Sizing her up with a meaningful look, he happily smiled. Okay. Yun Shirshir suddenly saw a flash of meaning in his eyes, and knew that this evil man must have thought in the wrong direction. "Hey, it's not what you think," she hurriedly explained. "I mean, I'll cook noodles for you." "Hey, you're not allowed to think in the wrong direction." Wuxia didn't allow her to explain. He pushed her and smiled playfully. "You're the one who deliberately led me to think in that direction." Shameless. Wuxia's domineering style was vividly displayed at this moment. "You must love how shameless I am." "You?" Yun Shirshir was so angry that her cheeks were pink. She stomped her feet and pushed him. "Stop fooling around. I'll go cook noodles for you." With that, she pushed him away and walked towards the fridge. Wuxia tugged her arm and pulled her into his embrace. In the moment she struggled, he bent down and kissed her delicate lips. "I don't want to eat noodles. I want to eat you." He pressed his lips against hers and breathed out a sentence. What followed was an endless kiss. Soft and charming, he was extremely infatuated with her sweet scent. He kissed her deeply and couldn't bear to let go of her for a long time. The interaction between their lips and teeth outlined the primitive impulse hidden deep in their hearts. Yun Shirshir tried her best to suppress the rising desire in her heart. After struggling for a while, under his continuous attacks, she hurriedly retracted her drifting thoughts. "Don't." "Okay." He easily interrupted her and corrected her. Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Stop fooling around. You didn't eat dinner." "It's not important," interrupted the man, not allowing her to object. "What if the stomach disease acts up again?" "It's not important. Wuxia, if your stomach acts up, it'll be very uncomfortable." "It's not important." Wuxia held her face intimately and kissed her lips again and again. He looked at her affectionately. "The most important thing now is you." With that, he carried her bridal style into the bedroom and closed the door. A minute later, Yu tiptoed out of the room and glanced disdainfully at the master bedroom, muttering inwardly, "Dirty, dirty, 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 dirty. Shame on you. Daddy is getting dirtier." He couldn't listen to it anymore. Chapter 17:23. He woke up in the middle of the night and wanted to go to the bathroom. Just as he opened the door, he saw the two entwined figures in the kitchen, so he tactfully closed the door. It was only when Wuxia carried Yun Shirshir into the bedroom that he came out and went to the kitchen. Looking at the mess in the kitchen, he sighed and quietly cleaned it up. Seriously, she was already a grown-up, yet she was still so troublesome. She made a mess in the kitchen and he had to clean up the mess. He really could not do anything about them. Despite his disdain, Yu still cleaned up the kitchen. In the end, he resisted the urge to eavesdrop. He came out of the bathroom, went to the bedroom, and went to bed. However, on this night, a certain woman was tormented miserably. A certain energetic man was not willing to stop until the wee hours of the morning. She was so tormented that her toes were trembling when she got out of bed. In the end, she was still shamefully dependent on him. He carried her to the bathroom and cleaned her up. She still had to film a scene tomorrow, so she begged him not to leave too many marks on her body. Although the man restrained himself a little, he still left some ambiguous kiss marks on her body. Yun Shirshir was extremely vexed. She only felt that tomorrow she would have to sneak into the room with the props and costumes, just like before. Ever since that day when Wuxia brought Yu back to the Mu family and officially announced his identity, the Mu family was in an uproar. There was a lot of discussion about Wuxia's actions, especially after he announced that Yun Tianyu would be the future successor of the Mu group and that he would focus on grooming him. This caused a lot of panic and uproar among the Mus. The bloodshed hidden in the dark was already ready to make a move. Wuxia was very strict about protecting Yu. Even after announcing his identity, he tried his best to prevent him from being exposed in front of the media. Hence, he did not hold a press conference to protect him. Still, this matter quickly spread to the Song family. Song Enya was even more incredulous when she learned about it. What? Brother Mu actually wants to make that illegitimate child the heir. Then, wouldn't that allow Yun Shirshir's scheme to succeed? In Song Enya's eyes, Yoon Shirshir was an extremely scheming woman. On the surface, she looked innocent and harmless, like a pure and innocent little bunny. However, it was often people like her who were the most unfathomable. She had used the opportunity of surrogacy to give birth to 2 children. She had secretly kept one of the children by her side and nurtured it. Now that the child had been recognized by the Mu family and had been made the heir, it was only a matter of time before she was recognized by the Mu family. Wasn't this exactly what Yoon Shirshir wanted? Wasn't all of her painstaking planning for this day? Just like the royal family in ancient times, if her son was made the heir, then wouldn't she be able to fly up the tree and become a phoenix? Oh my God! What a flawless plan! This Yoon Shirshir's methods were really impressive. Half of her ambition had already been realized. She and Brother Mu had registered their marriage, and she was only a step away from entering the Mu family. Song Enya was even more anxious and could no longer hold herself back. Chapter 17:24. Minyu, on the other hand, stood at the side in trepidation. Song Enya had barged into the CEO's office without any explanation. Due to her status, he could not be too harsh on her, but he did not expect that she would refuse to leave after staying in the office for so long. Song Enya, who was sitting on the sofa in a daze, stood up excitedly the moment she saw Mu Yaja return and called out, "Brother Mu!" Perhaps due to her hesitation and agitation, she broke her voice the moment she opened her mouth, which was rather strange. Her lack of restraint caused Minyu to silently criticize her. She's the mayor's daughter, after all. How can she barge into the CEO's office with such fanfare and refuse to leave? She's too immoral. What would it look like if word got out? The main thing was that she had implicated the CEO and would inevitably be criticized. When Mu Yaja saw her, he frowned and walked straight to his desk. After putting down the documents, he sat down and asked coldly, "Why are you looking for me?" I called you. Why didn't you pick up?" "I was in a meeting." "Have you been in a meeting all day?" she asked with some dissatisfaction. Her tone was like that of a wife who was questioning her husband for not picking up her calls. It would be normal for her to ask such a question to Yoon Shirshir, but it was inappropriate for her to ask such a question given her status. Song Enya, however, did not notice it at all. Mu Yaja looked up at her with some dissatisfaction but did not say anything in the end. "Yes. Are you that busy? It's the end of the year, and the cases are piling up." It was rare for him to give such an explanation, but the implication was that he was very busy now and should not be disturbed. Alas, the Missy's EQ was notoriously low. Of course, she did not pick up on the warning in his words and continued to stay. "Even if you're busy, you should take care of your health. I heard from your executive assistant that you haven't eaten lunch again today. Are you hungry now, Brother Mu?" As she spoke, she walked to his desk and sat down on the chair beside him like a virtuous wife visiting her husband at work. "If you're hungry, I'll order takeout for you. How about that?" "No need." "Then are you thirsty? Shall I make you a cup of tea?" "No need." She pouted in dissatisfaction. "What exactly do you need, then?" Mu Yaja looked up at her and said meaningfully, "I need silence." Song Enya felt awkward the moment she heard that. After a long silence, she said with some grievance, "I don't want to disturb you at work, but there's something I need to hear from you personally." "Speak." Mu Yaja's words were concise and comprehensive. She pondered for a moment before carefully probing, "Brother Mu, are you married to Yoon Shirshir?" As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Mu Yaja's expression darken. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He raised his head and his cold gaze fell upon her, but there was a hint of displeasure in it. "Song Enya, did you investigate me?" He had never called her by her name, but this was the first and only time he had done so. Calling her by her full name was a sign of reproach. Be it his expression or his tone, it showed that he was extremely displeased at this moment. Chapter 17:25. Seeing that the situation had reached a stalemate, Minyu felt awkward. He was also someone who knew how to judge the situation. Sensing that something was amiss, he quietly retreated from the office and closed the door behind him. At this moment, only Mu Yaja and Song Enya were left in the spacious office. Without the presence of an outsider like him, Song Enya completely put down her airs as a missy and begged for his forgiveness. Brother Mu, I'm sorry. Don't misunderstand. I didn't investigate you on purpose. Song Enya explained helplessly in an attempt to appease his anger. However, Mu Yaja's face grew colder as he looked at her. His cold gaze made her feel somewhat unfamiliar. Mu Yaja's thin lips parted slightly, but his tone was extremely cold. If you didn't investigate on purpose, then you investigated me. Song Enya found it hard to defend herself. She bit her lower lip, feeling conflicted. Mu Yaja coldly said, Song Enya, I'm warning you. Whether I'm married or not, and who I marry, is none of your business. If you have the energy, spend it on other things. Brother Mu, how can you say that? Song Enya was angry and aggrieved. Her eyes were red and moist as she glared at him with tears in her eyes. I'm just concerned about you, Mu Yaja reprimanded in a deep voice. I don't need this kind of concern. Song Enya was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. Mu Yaja's handsome eyes were cold as he stared at her. Just one look from him was enough to pierce her skin. His thin lips moved slightly, but his voice was as cold as winter snow. Could freeze one's blood in an instant. Have I been too doting on you all this time? Is that why you're so arrogant that you don't care about propriety when you do things? I might be confused because of my concern, but Brother Mu, what bad intentions can I have toward you? You didn't even tell me that you're married. You didn't even give me a chance to give you my blessings. Will you give me your blessings if I tell you? Mu Yaja did not believe her words. Those were just excuses. How could he not know what she was thinking about him? Ever since that incident, he had distanced himself from her. Whether it was her calls or texts, he ignored them and pretended not to see them. Song Enya had come to the Mu group several times to look for him, but she had either failed to find him or was sent away by his assistant. He deliberately distanced himself from her because, first, even though he had always doted on Song Enya and treated her as his biological sister, no matter how close their relationship was, he would not let anyone who hurt Yun Shirshir get off lightly. Secondly, Yun Shirshir did not like Song Enya. Even if she did not say it, she did not mind. However, in consideration of his feelings, Mu Yaja was much colder to her. Even when Song Enya took the initiative to contact him, he treated her indifferently. Furthermore, after that incident, he was very disappointed in Song Enya and had a lot of dissatisfaction toward her. Still, he did not take any measures for the sake of the Song family's reputation, but that did not mean that he could let bygones be bygones. She carefully observed his expression and probed, Brother Mu, are you really going to marry that woman? Chapter 17:26. She stared at him blankly, feeling that the Mu Yaja in front of her was a stranger no matter how she looked at him. In the past, he would not be so strict with her and even say such harsh words to her. She furrowed her brows sadly, her red lips trembling as if she was deliberately suppressing the grievances in her heart. Nevertheless, tears still overflowed from her eyes and flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. She complained sadly, Brother Mu, you've changed. Mu Yaja's eyes were cold as she broke down and cried, In the past, you've never been so fierce to me, nor have you been so cold and indifferent to me. You clearly doted on me so much, but now, because of that Yun Shirshir, you're not only fierce to me, but you're also distancing yourself from me and treating me coldly. How can you do this? She raised her head abruptly and looked at him with teary eyes. Brother Mu, it's all because of her. If that woman hadn't appeared and snatched away the love that should have belonged to me, you wouldn't have treated me like this. You clearly doted on me the most. But now it was as if he had been bewitched by that Yun Shirshir. He ignored her and even treated her so coldly. It was so unfair. Mu Yaja frowned slightly. Yun Shirshir snatched away the love that should have belonged to her. Mu Yaja sneered at her words. Who did she think she was? Yun Shirshir was his legal wife, so it was his duty to dote on her, love her, dote on her, and be considerate of her. It was also his responsibility as a man. Moreover, he was happy to dote on his wife, and protect her in the palm of his hand. As for her, to him she was nothing. What did she mean by Yun Shirshir snatching away the love that should have belonged to her? It was ridiculous. He did not know why she would have such a ridiculous idea. Song Enya. It's time for you to stop being so self-righteous. Muyaja paused for a moment before continuing. Also, don't come to the office to look for me in the future. If my wife finds out, she'll be unhappy. The unspoken doting was reflected in his tone and expression. At the mention of Yun Shirshir, he addressed her intimately as Madam. The adoration in his eyes was unprecedented, making Song Enya extremely jealous. Madam? He actually addressed Yun Shirshir in such an intimate manner. How could he? Song Enya was so jealous that her teeth were about to shatter from gritting them. But in front of Muyaja, she had no choice but to force a smile. Brother Mu, some women aren't like what you see. Maybe, on the surface, she looks innocent and harmless, but in reality, she's very shrewd. Do you think she truly loves you? After a pause, she continued as if she did not notice Muyaja's darkening face. You're the head of the Mu family and the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. Do you really think she's with you just because she wants to be with you? I've long suspected that her motives were impure. Now, there's news from the Muse that you've announced that Yun Tianyu will be the successor of the Mu Group. Isn't this exactly what she wants? She's been scheming for 7 years. Isn't it all for this moment? Could it be that you really can't tell that all of this is because of her ambition? Brother Mu, wake up. Don't be blinded by this woman. Shut up. Chapter 17:27. Brother Mu, how dare you ask me to get lost? Song Enya asked in a daze, her eyes widening in disbelief. She did not expect that Muyaja would say such cruel words to her for Yun Shirshir. Shut up and get lost. He actually asked her to get lost. Why? She was reminding him out of goodwill. After all, in a circle like the entertainment industry, materialistic and extravagant, women from the entertainment industry were more or less shrewd. What about him? He did not listen to her advice and instead asked her to get lost. Song Enya was aggrieved and heartbroken. Even though she bit her lower lip hard, bean-sized tears still flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. Muyaja, on the other hand, was disgusted by her pitiful appearance. In the past, he might have felt some pity for her, but now he felt extremely disgusted by her. Get lost. I don't want to see you. Brother Mu. Song Enya was aggrieved and embarrassed. She stared at him with tears in her eyes, her face full of uneasiness. Only women understand women the best. The Yun Shirshir you see, the innocent and beautiful woman you see, is just an illusion. She's an actress, and her acting skills are so good. Everything she shows in front of you is just an act. How can there be such a naive woman? She's just putting on an act. She's obviously using someone else's womb to give birth and hiding the child by her side in a dignified manner. She's scheming so that she can rely on her child's status in the future. Crash! Muyaja finally lost his patience. He grabbed the teacup beside him, raised his wrist, and splashed the tea in the cup on Song Enya's face. Minyu had brewed and cooled the tea for him before he had a meeting. The tea was still warm. It splashed all over her exquisitely made-up face. The steeped tea leaves stained her face, eyelashes, and lips, making her look extremely pathetic. Song Enya was stunned for a moment. The moment she was splashed with tea, her mind went blank and stopped working. However, when she came back to her senses, a huge sense of grievance washed over her. As if it was the end of the world, great grief welled up in her heart. The corners of her lips twitched a few times, and her chest heaved up and down with sorrow. Tears gushed out uncontrollably. She was hurt by the person she loved the most and was even mercilessly humiliated. How exactly did she feel? At that moment, Song Enya even had the urge to die. In her heart, Muyaja was a godlike existence, whom she had always respected and admired. But reality gave her a hard slap. Brother Mu, how dare he humiliate her like this? However, the Missy's first reaction was not to feel humiliated but to feel uneasy and fearful. Did he hate her? No. She couldn't hate him. Song Enya looked at him with teary eyes, seemingly wanting to say something. Loving someone who did not love him. Loves am, however. The saddest thing was that the man she loved would never turn around to look at her even though she was already in the dust. She did not beg him to like her, though. She was willing to silently protect him for the rest of her life, even if she did not have a status. She would rather Mu Yaja's fiancé be Mu Wanru. At least Mu Wanru and him would be husband and wife without any status. At least he did not have any woman in his heart. Chapter 17:28. To put it bluntly, no one else could have what she could not have, either. Song Enya bit her lower lip tightly as the tea on her face slid down the wrinkles on her skin. More than half of her meticulously applied makeup was ruined by the impact of the tea. She lowered her head, her face ashen and filled with despair and grievance. She did not want him to see her in such a sorry state, so she said with a dead heart, "Brother Mu, it seems that I've disturbed you. I'll leave first. I'll look for you next time." With that, she stood up, pushed the chair away, and turned to retreat toward the door. Mu Yaja, however, said coldly behind her, "My wife doesn't like you, so don't come looking for me in the future." Song Enya's heart trembled when she heard that. She turned around abruptly and stared at him for a long time. Her face was pale, but the corners of her lips curled up as tears gushed out uncontrollably. "Brother Mu, don't be angry with me. Okay. I'll be obedient. Okay? I'll listen to you obediently. I won't come looking for you until you've cooled down. Okay? I beg you. Don't abandon me." If he really hated her from now on, it would be like the end of the world for her. Song Enya cried helplessly like a child. If it were in the past, Mu Yaja's heart would probably soften because of this. However, looking at her now, more than half of her exquisite makeup was ruined, revealing her original bare face. On the surface, she looked innocent and harmless. When he thought of the things she had done behind his back and hurt Yun Shirshir, he could no longer feel heartache for her. Perhaps, when there was someone important enough in his heart, others would seem unimportant. He did not care what this woman, whom he had doted on since they were young, would think of him because of his outburst this time. He did not value her. As long as his woman did not like someone, he would not come into contact with them. Mu Yaja ignored her. He lowered his head coldly and made a call to Minyu to clean up the mess in his office. Minyu had just pushed open the office door when he was startled to see Song Enya's ghastly pale face. He patted his chest, obviously frightened, but he couldn't show it on his face. To be honest, Song Enya's current state was rather pitiful. Her originally pretty face and exquisite makeup had been splashed all over with tea leaves on her face, making her look extremely miserable. What was more disgusting was, it turned out that Song Enya's beautiful looks were all done with makeup. Half of her face had taken off her makeup, and she no longer had any spiritual energy. She looked plain and ordinary. It seemed that the so-called beauties were just packaged at a later stage. The so-called socialites of the capital, the daughter of the mayor, were just ordinary people. "Clean up the table," Mu Yaja ordered. After that, he stood up, picked up the document, and walked to the door. Minyu stood to the side obediently and made way for him. When they reached the door, the Missy's lips trembled slightly as she tentatively reached out to grab his sleeve. Mu Yaja, however, seemed to have eyes on the back of his head as he evaded her ruthlessly with an expressionless face. Song Enya reached out to grab air and watched helplessly as he slammed the door and left. The loud bang seemed to show how displeased he was. The sound of the door closing was so loud that even Minyu, who was standing at the side, was shocked and dumbfounded. Chapter 17:29. Once he was done tidying up the office, he would have to inform his subordinates to act according to their mood. He hurriedly tidied up the table. The CEO's office was not a place where just anyone could enter. It was equipped with a dedicated cleaner and assistant. Other than some important directors of the consortium, Minyu was probably the only one who could enter and leave freely. He was also the one who delivered the important documents. After Mu Yaja slammed the door and left, Song Enya seemed to have lost all her strength. She slowly fell to the floor and sobbed sadly. After he was done tidying up the table, he turned around and saw her sitting helplessly on the floor, covering her face and crying sadly. He walked over and asked kindly, "Miss Song, should I get someone to send you back?" He kindly reminded her, "Miss Song." Song Enya, who was already in a state of despair, was annoyed by his repeated disturbances. She raised her head and yelled, "Don't bother about me." Minyu frowned, angered by her rudeness. However, given his status, he could not be calculative with her. He smiled elegantly and calmly said, "If you feel sad, you can find a corner and cry. At least think of a way to clean yourself up first. You look quite ugly like this. Besides, you're disturbing me by sitting here." "What? The boss has a serious case of misophobia. You're dirty, so don't dirty the office. He'll be angry again when you come back," he said expressionlessly. "You." Song Enya could hear the sarcasm in his words. She raised a brow and glared at him angrily. He smiled slightly but was not afraid of the threat in her eyes. He said coldly, "Please leave, okay? Okay. You're all chasing me away, right? I'll leave." With that, she got up and made to leave. Minyu called out from behind, "Please wait a moment." She turned around. "What do you want now? Don't forget your bag." He passed her Gucci handbag to her. She was flustered and exasperated. Snatching the bag from his hand, she turned around and slammed the door behind her. After she returned home, she locked herself in her room and did not come out. When Song Yunchi came back, she knocked on the door, but no one answered. He didn't know what had happened today, but he vaguely sensed that his sister was in a bad mood. It was more or less related to Uncle Mu. However, he was exhausted from dealing with this matter. This younger sister of his was all right in other aspects, but her temper was especially stubborn. Once she set her mind on something, she would insist until her head bled and she would not change her mind. It was also that night that she decided to take a risk. Since she could not get Brother Mu, she would not hesitate to resort to some despicable means. Of course, this was all in the future. News of Mu Yaja's marriage soon reached Mu Linfeng's ears. Mu Linfeng had a wide network of connections in both the underworld and the underworld. Hence, his nephew's marriage could not be kept a secret from him for long. When he found out that Mu Yaja had registered his marriage with Yun Shishir without telling the rest of the Muse, he was furious. What did it mean to register their marriage? It meant that they were officially legally married. Chapter 1730. He went straight to the point without beating around the bush. "I heard that you've registered your marriage with that woman. You should have at least informed me of such a huge matter." He had long expected his uncle to find out about this matter so quickly. He questioned him furiously the moment he called. Mu Yaja laughed instead. "Second uncle, why should I inform you in advance? Who I marry is my private matter. I don't have to report to you about what I should do I? Besides, we're registering our marriage, not holding a wedding. There's no need to make such a big fuss about it." "So, you're saying that you've registered your marriage with that woman? You should have reported it to me." Mu Linfeng was infuriated by his nonchalant tone and felt that he had been greatly neglected. "Do you think you'll agree to this if I report it to you? You're against it anyway, so there's no need for me to inform you." Mu Yaja paused for a moment before continuing in a low voice. "Also, second uncle, that woman you're talking about is now my legitimate wife. She has her own name. As a form of respect, I think it's inappropriate for you to call her that." Mu Linfeng was so angry that he laughed when he heard that. He sneered. "She's just a despicable woman who popped out of nowhere. She's not worthy of my respect." Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. He had already expected his uncle's attitude, so he wasn't angry at all. Yun Shishir was his wife. He didn't care what others thought of her. She was the woman he had set his mind on, and that was enough. Besides, his marriage was his business. Who had the right to tell him what to do? "Yaja, you've gone overboard on this point. Is it appropriate for you to register your marriage without saying a word? What will people say about you if this spreads to the Mu family?" Mu Linfeng paused for a moment before ordering. Take advantage of the fact that this matter hasn't spread to the public yet to dissolve your marriage. When the time comes, I'll use some means to suppress this matter and pretend that it never happened. Do you understand? Annul the marriage? Mu Yaja suddenly laughed, but his voice was cold. Second uncle, when have I ever gone back on my words? Since I'm married to her, there's no such thing as divorce. Don't mention this matter again. I've made up my mind. Mu Yaja sat down on the sofa with his legs crossed elegantly. He held his cell phone in his hand, but he appeared nonchalant and relaxed. On the other end, Mu Linfeng was infuriated by his resolute attitude. He did not utter a word, but his heavy breathing could be heard through the phone. It was obvious that he was eyeing him covetously. It seemed that he was very angry. Are you really determined to marry her? Mu Linfeng's question was met with affirmation from Mu Yaja. I've already decided. I hope second uncle can fulfill my wish. In your dreams. Mu Linfeng retorted angrily. I'll fulfill your wish. If you want to get married, sure. However, it couldn't be that woman of unknown origin. You've been getting more and more out of hand recently. First, you suddenly brought back a child and announced his identity as the successor. Then, you registered your marriage with this woman. Are you out to ruin the Mu family's reputation? Ruin the family's reputation? Chapter 1731. Second uncle. Didn't you ask me to get married as soon as possible? Now that I've fulfilled your wish, I'm marrying a wife, having a child, and holding a grand wedding in the future. Yu is very outstanding and smart. With some training, she'll definitely become a great talent in the future. She'll surpass her master and be a better successor than me when she grows up. As for Yun Shirshir, she's gentle and skilled. I owe her a lot and don't want to mistreat her anymore. Haha, you don't want to mistreat her, so you're sacrificing the Mu family's reputation. You even said that you want to hold a grand wedding. I think you're determined to throw the Mu family's reputation to the ground. Mu Linfeng continued without waiting for him to reply. What kind of woman is Yun Shirshir? She was just a tool for the Mu family to give birth to a child. The contract clearly states that after giving birth, she can't cause any trouble for the child's custody. But what about her? Not only did she hide the child by her side, but she even tried to use him to elevate her status. Is that even possible? What will others think of the Mu family if this gets out? The Mu family's reputation can't be ruined in this woman's hands. If the public finds out that the young madam of the Mu family was just a surrogate mother back then, Mu Yaja did not say a word. Clearly, he did not agree with his words. Mu Linfeng restrained his anger and tried to persuade him. If you really want to get married, I'm naturally happy to see it happen. You're not young anymore. If you want to get married, find a woman of equal status. Not only can you give the Mu family an explanation, but you'll also have a strong wife who can help you in your career. When the time comes, you'll have stabilized your foundation and no one will be able to shake you. Isn't that the best of both worlds? But what about you? You stubbornly married a commoner with no background, and this woman even gave birth to a child. Wouldn't it be bad if word got out that she had a child out of wedlock? Even if she had a child out of wedlock, he's still my son. Mu Linfeng was exasperated. But the public doesn't care about this. They all thought that Mui Chen was Mu Wanru's son. Now, although the outside world knows that you and Mu Wanru have broken off the engagement, they still don't know who Mui Chen's biological mother is. If this news gets out and the outside world learns that the Mu family used surrogacy, it will definitely affect the Mu family's reputation. I don't care. I've made up my mind. Anyway, I can't annul our marriage. No matter what second uncle says, it's useless. Mu Yaja's attitude was very firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Mu Linfeng flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was speechless for a moment before he suddenly took half a step back. It's fine if you insist on not canceling the engagement. If Yun Shirshir wants to enter the Mu family, she can. Second uncle will give you half a step, but you want to have a grand wedding? That's impossible. What do you mean? She's married, but she can't say anything. Since you want to marry her, then there's no problem with her being your concubine. However, you mustn't spread the news of your marriage. She's your legal wife, but in name, she can only be considered as a concubine at most. This is second uncle's biggest concession. Concubine? Mu Yaja frowned when he heard this. However, he was not surprised by Mu Linfeng's suggestion. It was just like his style. In the wealthy, a concubine represented a concubine. In ancient times, she was just a concubine and could not be brought up in public. Chapter 1732. In a wealthy family like the Mu family, Mu Shang could only marry a few concubines. Without a grand wedding, a concubine's status was so low that she could not even enter the family tree. If she worked hard enough and gave birth to outstanding children, she could enter the family tree. However, as a concubine, she could not see the light of day or let the outside world know about it. Mu Lianjua's mother was one of them. In other words, if Yun Shishir were to become a concubine, she would have no status in the Mu family. In Mu Linfeng's heart, giving her the position of a concubine was already a favor for her. For a commoner with no background and no powerful maternal family to be able to marry into the Mu family, it was already considered a blessing from her ancestors. Moreover, it was not as if he did not know what kind of person Yun Shishir's biological mother was. She was just a lowly singer from a nightclub in the capital. Only Mu Shang, that old thing, would treat her like a treasure. Even if her biological mother's identity was concealed, Yun Shishir's adoptive parents would still be known by the public. By then, the Mu family's reputation would be greatly tarnished. The story of a commoner and a noble prince would probably only appear in fairy tales. Reality was so cruel. He could not be blamed for being snobbish. A woman like Yun Shishir could not enter the Mu family. However, since he insisted on marrying her, if Mu Yaja insisted on being stubborn, who knew what earth-shattering actions he would take? If he were to create some outrageous news, he would be too ashamed to face others. Since that was the case, why not take a step back? His original intention was to let Yun Shishir enter the family as a concubine and let Mu Yaja marry a woman from a powerful maternal family. It did not matter if they had feelings for each other or not. As for her family background, he was not that strict. After all, in such a big city like the capital, there were only a handful of people who were qualified to be chosen from among the tens of thousands who were on the same level as the Mu family. As long as she had a comparable background, had a decent family background, and had a gentle and outstanding personality, she would be qualified to be the Mu family's young mistress. This way, he could make appropriate concessions for Yun Shishir's entry into the family. Even a ghost would know what Mu Linfeng was scheming at the moment from his cold words. Mu Yaja frowned, but suddenly let out a cold laugh. Second uncle, what era is it now? You're still talking about concubines and whatnot? Forget it. If I marry her, she'll be the young mistress. There are no other options. You! Mu Linfeng was at a loss for words. You brat! Why are you so stubborn? You're the stubborn one, aren't you? Haven't I already told you that I, Mu Yaja, have never been so incompetent that I need to rely on a woman to establish my position? I'm not that kind of mediocre person. Second uncle, don't think of me as someone who has to marry a woman with a good family background in order to stabilize his foundation. There's no need for that. Mu Yaja laughed coldly, his tone somewhat arrogant. He had the right to say this. Of course, Mu Linfeng's support was indispensable for him to be able to sit in this position. However, how could a man without any ability stand out in such a treacherous and sinister family? Chapter 1733. He was extremely confident and conceited. One could even say that he was proud of himself. He believed in his own abilities and didn't need to use marriage to secure his position. He despised such methods the most. Mu Linfeng was about to go mad with anger. This rascal was the worst at this. You insist on doing this. Can't you listen to my advice? Marriage is a matter of parents' orders and matchmakers' words. How can you treat it as child's play? Your parents aren't around now, and as your elder, I'm giving you some advice. How can you not listen? Second uncle, you should know who's the head of the Mu family now. Mu Yaja reminded him coldly. Mu Linfeng choked on his words. Since I'm the person with the highest authority in the Mu family, do I need others to decide my marriage and who I marry? Your era is over. It's my era now. You have no right to interfere with what I want to do. After a pause, he said, That's enough. It's useless to say more. You don't have to say too much either, lest you hurt our relationship. Ha! His words were mocking and didn't give him any face. He didn't want to argue with this stubborn old man either. Mu Linfeng was so angry that he was about to have a stroke. He panted heavily on the other end as if he was about to pass out. After a long silence, he said angrily, Fine, you're stubborn. You're the most stubborn. If you don't like my idea, it's obvious that you don't care about me. Haha, you're the head of the family, so you have the most seniority, right? I think you're really arrogant now that you're the head of the family. So much so that you don't care about me now. You really don't know what's good for you. If you're so capable, you can get married. If you want to hold a wedding, don't use the Mu family's capital. You can't touch a single cent of the company's accounts either. Let's see what you're capable of after leaving the Mu family. With that, Mu Linfeng hung up angrily. Mu Yaja tossed his phone aside, clearly indifferent. At night, Mu Yaja made an appointment with Lu Jinyu. Rather than calling it an appointment, it was more like a summon. The meeting was at a private clubhouse. When Lu Jinyu arrived, Mu Yaja was in the billiard room and had just scored a shot. When he saw Lu Jinyu, he put down his cue stick and looked up. You're here. Boss's summons. I can't be late even if I'm in a hurry. Lu Jinyu took off his jacket and the waiter brought him some drinks. He casually picked up a glass of red wine and took a sip before smiling comfortably. Boss, is there something important you want to talk to me about now? Lu Jinyu, the man who addressed Mu Yaja as boss, was an important figure and was also Mu Yaja's friend for many years. Although they were friends, their relationship was probably closer than that. Mu Yaja had established his own connections outside of the Mu family and secretly cultivated some of his own forces. Other than the Mu family's businesses, he also had his own personal assets and family business. Just as he said, he didn't leave the Mu family with nothing. However, without him, the Mu family would only be a wasteland. Back then, he was groomed by Mu Linfeng to be the successor. As the helmsman, he had worked hard and contributed a lot to the Mu family's success. However, he wasn't a fool. He wouldn't sacrifice himself for the sake of the Mu family. Chapter 1734. Until now, he could say that the assets under his name were not comparable to the Mu family's. However, with the connections he had set up over the years and the inextricable business network, his foundation was already very stable. Lu Jinyu was one of the forces he had groomed. Could be said that he was his trusted aide. He was very capable and very loyal. That was a friendship forged from years of fighting together. This time, he had asked Lu Jinyu to come over to prepare for the wedding. Since he had said it well, he had to do it well too. Since Mu Linfeng had said that it was fine to hold the wedding. However, he could not use a single cent of the Mu family's assets. He had listened and done so. Mu Yaja smiled. Can't I drink with you for no reason? I'm really flattered to hear you say that, boss. Lu Jinyu said with a smile. He put down the wine glass, picked up the cue stick, and stood in front of the table to observe the situation. There was a sharp look in his eyes. Lu Jinyu, 25 years old, was tall and straight. He came from an aristocratic family and was good-looking. When he stood next to Mu Yaja, be it in terms of aura or poise, they could be considered to be on par. Although he was young, he looked gentle and refined. When he smiled, it was as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. He looked like a modest gentleman. However, in reality, his methods were very ruthless. He was the classic character of a smiling tiger. He was absolutely reliable and never failed to get things done. Mu Yaja sat on the sofa and looked at Lu Jinyu, who was standing by the table. He crouched down and played a ball. Suddenly, he said in a deep voice, I'm getting married. Cough. When Lu Jinyu heard that, the cue stick tilted, and the ball suddenly deviated from its course and hit the edge of the table. He turned around in surprise, clearly feeling that this news was too sudden. Boss, I'm not prepared for this at all. You're getting married? Yes. Ouch! Lu Jinyu slapped his forehead and said in a daze, "It's too sudden. It's too sudden. I'm not prepared for it at all." Muyaja laughed inwardly. "I'm getting married. Why do you need to be prepared?" "Because I thought that you wouldn't have any thoughts of getting married and having children within the next 10 years. Lu Jinyu answered truthfully. Then he asked curiously, "But I'm really curious." He wondered which girl was so capable that she was able to capture the heart of an ice block like his boss. "I really admire you. Really admire you." In Lu Jinyu's eyes, Muyaja was a typical abstinent man. He had never seen any woman by Muyaja's side since they met. There were many who flocked to him like a flock of ducks, but none of them caught his eye. He was an ambitious person, and all his heart was placed on expanding his business. He had once silently wondered if there was such a problem with his boss's sexual orientation. He was even a little worried about his own safety. "But boss, now that you have a woman, I'm relieved." Lu Jinyu breathed a sigh of relief. Muyaja frowned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Lu Jinyu hurriedly denied it. He could not let him know that he had once doubted his sexual orientation. Otherwise, what a tragic end. "Boss, which girl is she? Why don't you introduce her to me another day?" Muyaja snorted. "There's no need for that." Chapter 1735. His heart was a little hurt. "Boss, you're being too petty with your words. As your brother, I'd like to meet my sister-in-law. At the same time, I'd like to see what a magnanimous lady she is to be able to subdue an ice block like you. You'll have plenty of opportunities when the time comes. You'll be able to see her at the engagement ceremony very soon." At the mention of Yun Shirshir, Muyaja's lips could not help but curl into a gentle smile. It was a casual and gentle smile that had never been seen before. Seeing this, Lu Jinyu thought to himself, "I didn't expect boss to fall in love one day. As a single dog, he could smell the sour stench of love. He felt like he had been cruelly abused. I've specially asked you to come over for the wedding ceremony to discuss the process. After all, I don't know much about it and wanted to ask for your opinion." Lu Jinyu broke out in a cold sweat. "Boss, I don't know either. I've never been married before. I don't even have a girlfriend." After a pause, he suddenly said in a low voice, "It's a wedding. According to the rules, first of all, we have to buy a new house as our wedding home and equip it with a more luxurious wedding car. Then we have to hold a proper wedding ceremony. That's all there is to a wedding. I didn't ask for your opinion in this regard." Muyaja was speechless. Lu Jinyu was confused and lost. Then, "I want to make the wedding more presentable." Lu Jinyu naturally agreed with this point. "Yes, it has to be. Boss's wedding must be grand. There's no doubt about that." Muyaja continued, "If we want the wedding to be grand, we need to spend some money on it. However, I've thought about it. There's no need to use the Mu family's capital." That was the main consideration he had for this point. He had promised Yun Shirshir that he would give her a wedding of the century that would attract the attention of the world. Naturally, he had to fulfill this promise. In that case, he would need some capital. Mu Linfeng had said that he could hold a wedding, but he could not use the Mu Group's account or withdraw funds from the consortium. He had quite a large sum of money in the Mu family's account, but he could not use it. After all, Muyaja had agreed to Mu Linfeng's request. Since he had spoken, there was no room for negotiation. There was no reason for him to go back on his word. If he said he wouldn't use it, then he wouldn't use it. He had always been a man of his word. Mu Linfeng was waiting to see him make a fool of himself. He thought that without the support of the Muyaja definitely did not have the money to hold a sensational and respectable wedding. He was certain that Muyaja did not have the ability to conjure up so much money, unless he wanted to use the funds in Mu Group's account. If that happened, he would become a laughingstock. He had spoken tough words, but his actions were like this. He must have been looked down upon by others. However, what Mu Linfeng didn't know was that Muyaja had secretly cultivated a force outside and possessed a chain of assets that couldn't be underestimated. He had plenty of confidence. However, the problem was that his personal funds were already flowing through the industry chain. They were constantly in operation and invested in various projects. If he were to withdraw them all at once, it would hurt his vitality. There was no need to hurt his many years of foundation for a wedding. Hence, he looked for Lu Jinyu to discuss how long it would take for him to withdraw the funds without harming the operation of the funds. Chapter 1736. In this aspect, Lu Jinyu had more experience. Hence, he asked, "How much money can you withdraw from my account in a short period of time?" Lu Jinyu was stunned for a moment, unable to react. "Boss, do you mean you want to use your own funds to hold the wedding?" "Yes." "Why?" Lu Jinyu didn't understand. If they got married, the Mu family had a lot of assets in their account. It wouldn't be a problem to prepare a few 100 million yuan overnight, let alone in a short period of time. Why would he use his own funds? "You don't have to question my decision. I have my reasons for doing this." "Okay, I understand." Lu Jinyu was silent for a moment. He thought for a while and said, "Boss, I've done some calculations. The funds in our account are now operating in various capital chains. The funds in the capital pool are all tied up. We can't withdraw much of the idle funds in a short period of time. It's about tens of millions." Mu Yaja frowned. "That's too little. It's not enough." Lu Jinyu sighed. "There's no choice. During this period of time, the end of the year is approaching. The funds in the capital pool are very tight. It won't recover in a short period of time. It's already the limit to withdraw this much." Mu Yaja tapped his fingertips on the table and asked, "If I want to withdraw 500 million yuan, how long will it take?" Lu Jinyu raised his eyebrows in surprise. He then said, "At least after the new year the funds will recover. A few 100 million yuan won't be a problem." "So long. What about the wedding house? Do you need to arrange it yourself?" Mu Yaja said in a low voice, "Didn't you hear me just now? I won't use the Mu family's capital. I have properties under my name now, but they are all the Mu family's capital. If I say I won't use them, I won't use them. As for the wedding house, I'll definitely buy another one and write it in her name." Lu Jinyu pursed his lips. "The wedding house isn't the biggest problem. The problem is, boss, how do you want to arrange the wedding? The investment in the wedding can be said to be a bottomless pit. There's no limit to it. Naturally, we'll do it in the best way possible." Mu Yaja paused for a moment and then said, "I don't want to delay the wedding for too long. Get it done as soon as possible. As for what you said about the funds only coming back after the new year, that's not a problem. I'm not optimistic about getting married in winter. It would be very appropriate to hold the wedding in spring. Pay more attention to the funding issue for me." Lu Jinyu was suddenly even more curious about what kind of woman Yun Shishir was. He actually made Big Boss think about how to arrange a grand wedding, and even didn't hesitate to transfer funds from the capital pool. This was unprecedented. "Boss, when is the engagement ceremony?" Mu Yaja smiled and said, "The preparations are almost done. I'll invite you then." "Okay, then I'll be looking forward to it." Lu Jinyu sat down at the table. Suddenly, he regained his serious expression and said, "But let's put that aside. Since you've asked to meet me, I'd like to mention something to you." "What is it?" Mu Yaja's expression also became serious. Then Lu Jinyu discussed with him the recent problems that had arisen in the company. Lu Jinyu never made decisions on key issues and always followed his advice. 5 years ago, Mu Yaja began to focus on cultivating his own power outside of the Mu group. Chapter 1737. Lu Jinyu could understand his decision very well. As a century-old wealthy family, the Mu family dominated the entire Asian economy. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were one of the top wealthy families. Perhaps there were very few consortiums in the world that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Mu Corporation. However, Mu Yaja was determined to leave the Mu family and cultivate his own business. Firstly, it was because he was very ambitious. Although the Mu Corporation was deeply rooted, it was difficult for it to develop further because of the constraints. The Mu Corporation had a political background. It could be said that it was the economic heart of the country. If it was involved in the front line, it would cause the entire country's economy to collapse. Therefore, there were many restrictions. Secondly, because it was a family consortium, it involved the interests of many people. The involvement was too deep, and every step was treacherous. Therefore, he was determined to establish his own Xingyu financial group with his many years of experience and connections in the Mu Corporation. After 3 rounds of financing, it gradually got on the right track. Until now, the Xingyu Financial Group's development momentum was majestic. It had become a force that could not be underestimated. Under the name of the Xingyu Financial Group, there were 4 major companies. Among them, the first company, EasyBuy, was a senior shopping website established 7 years ago. When the website was first established, no one cared about it. However, Wuxia had a unique insight. As early as 7 years ago, he saw the development momentum of online shopping and invested in it. A year ago, EasyBuy was listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and had a huge market value. In addition to the shopping website, Wuxia was also involved in many other industries. In addition to real estate, resorts, and financial services, there were many undeveloped emerging industries with limitless potential. As Wuxia's right-hand man, Lu Jinyu had always been in charge of all the affairs of the Xingyu Financial Group. If there were any problems in the financial group, he usually did not report to Wuxia. Instead, he handled it himself. He had business talent and unique skills, so he could often take charge of the overall situation. However, if it was more important and troublesome, Lu Jinyu would refer to Wuxia's opinion no matter what. He listed out all the big and small problems that had recently occurred in the company to him. Wuxia gave his own suggestion. The two of them discussed for a long time and actually hit it off tacitly. That's what I was thinking as well. I didn't expect that I would agree with you. There are some things that you don't have to ask for my opinion. I believe that you can handle things well. After all, I have my eyes on you. You have the ability. Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "Since we're done talking, shall we practice?" He looked at the billiard table at the side and felt an itch in his heart. It's been a long time since I've sparred with boss. My hands are itching. No. Wuxia raised his wrist and looked at his watch. It's getting late. I should go home. Lu Jinyu frowned. Why? Why are you in such a hurry to go home today? Could it be that sister-in-law is at home and is in a hurry to go back to accompany madam? Wuxia smiled. Noticing the smile on his face, Lu Jinyu suddenly fell into a daze. Wuxia saw his strange expression and raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Look at your expression. What's on your mind? Nothing. I just feel that boss has changed a little. Lu Jinyu said truthfully. Changed? Wuxia was intrigued. How has it changed? Chapter 1738. It's an indescribable feeling. In the past, Wuxia had exuded a cold aura and a sharpness that only a king could possess. However, once a man fell in love, even his aura would change. Right now, he gave off the feeling that his sharpness had been softened. When he mentioned Yun Shirshir, the smile on his face was one of warmth and tenderness that he had never shown before. Perhaps this was the biggest change that love could bring to a man. Boss had changed. However, Lu Jinyu was happy to see such a change. In the past, Wuxia was like an ice block, high and mighty. He didn't seem like a man of the mortal world at all. However, things were different now. His smile was warm and gentle. He was no longer as cold as before, as if he was difficult to get close to. When he smiled, he gave people an inexplicable warmth. He liked such a change. Lu Jinyu suddenly felt as if he had been fed a mouthful of dog food. He howled like a dog and complained aggrievedly, "Boss, why do I feel like I'm being abused by you even though you didn't bring sister-in-law with you?" Wuxia glanced at him coldly and said, "It's time for you to find a girlfriend." "Yeah, I think so too. Boss, why don't you introduce a girlfriend to me?" Lu Jinyu asked shamelessly. He thought that Wuxia would reject him, but unexpectedly, he seemed to be in a particularly good mood today. Instead, he asked him, "What kind of woman do you want?" "Someone like sister-in-law would be good." Wuxia's gaze turned cold and he snorted. "Dream on." "Huh? You won't be able to find another woman like sister-in-law in the world. Don't even think about it in this lifetime." Of course, don't even think about it in your next life. Lu Jinyu was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. Boss, do you know that there's only one word to describe you in your current state? It's too apt. What word? Lu Jinyu raised his brows and smiled. Wife's slave. Mu Yaja was speechless. Preparations for the engagement were in full swing. Yun Shirshir didn't know that Mu Yaja had already started preparing for the engagement. At this moment, she was still on set. There was a night shoot today, so she couldn't go home that night. She had to inform Mu Yaja and the two little munchkins in advance. Night jobs, as the name suggested, were scenes that needed to be filmed at night. Therefore, they could only work at night. What was interesting was that when Gu Xiaoyang found her, his face was actually trembling with fear. His usual high and mighty attitude was nowhere to be seen. He rubbed his hands together, looking very uneasy. It made Yun Shirshir nervous. She thought that she had made a mistake. His last question was to ask her if she could stay behind to work the night shift. Yun Shirshir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Of course, Director Gu Xiaoyang nodded. That's great. As he spoke, he did not dare to say anything more to her and hurriedly went to work. Yun Shirshir was confused. She thought to herself, Mu Yaja's authority in speaking was indeed not to be underestimated. Now that she was on set, even Lin Ji, who had always been arrogant, did not dare to act rashly toward her. The special treatment made her feel rather embarrassed. Chapter 1739. During this period, Yun Shirshir's scenes had been filmed first. These days, her scenes were mostly with Lin Ji and some other supporting roles. Hence, her time with Hua Jin had been staggered. When Hua Jin saw that she had stayed behind to work the night shift, he was also a little surprised. Shirshir, I haven't seen you in a long time. You've been so busy recently. Hua Jin's closeness made Yun Shirshir roll her eyes in her heart. All right, under her special privileges. Hua Jin was probably the only exception. She didn't know if he didn't know or if he just didn't care. Even though everyone in the crew avoided Yun Shirshir, he was the only one who wanted to stick to her all the time. No matter how much Yun Shirshir tried to chase him away, it was useless. However, after interacting with him for a period of time, she realized that Hua Jin didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards her. The prank he had played on her that day was at most a joke. In the past, when someone in the crew bullied her and rolled their eyes at her, Hua Jin would silently watch and make things difficult for them behind their backs. Although Yun Shirshir didn't know whether to laugh or cry, she knew that Hua Jin really didn't have any ill intentions towards her. It was just that she really couldn't understand why Hua Jin liked to stick to her. Aside from the way he fawned over her, he also took good care of her on set because of his status. Over time, Yun Shirshir also let down her guard against him. Hua Jin, stay away from me. I'm memorizing the script. You're always memorizing the script. You really don't have any interest in life. Hua Jin said quietly. You're the only one who has interest in life. Okay. Hua Jin chuckled and playfully nudged her with his elbow. Why did you enter showbiz in the first place? Me? Yes. Yun Shirshir answered truthfully. It's just a coincidence, I guess. Plus, I thought that I could earn money by acting, so I decided to become an actor. Hua Jin pursed his lips in disdain. Boring. What's boring? Shirshir, you're such a strange woman. In such a materialistic circle, most of the girls who entered this circle had great ambitions and aspirations. For example, those who want to be famous, those who want to earn big money, those who want to be rich, those who want to climb the social ladder. Everyone is ambitious, but only you seem to stand aloof from worldly affairs. Since you're standing aloof from worldly affairs, why did you enter the entertainment industry? Yun Shirshir said frankly, to support my family. Hua Jin was silent. He looked at her and blinked his beautiful eyes. He was probably used to her way of speaking, so he smiled. But you're also quite cute like this. She's so silly. Sometimes when she's bullied, she doesn't say anything. She's like a punching bag. You're the punching bag. Do you think I'm like you? If anyone dares to bully me, I'll make them kneel and beg for mercy. Hua Jin smiled and said, Shirshir, you have to know that in this world where the strong prey on the weak, You either submit to the strong or work hard to become the strong. However, for someone like you, sometimes being too kind is actually a sin. I don't like to fight with others. Maybe it's because of my nature, or maybe it's because of my nature that I realized that I'm not very suitable for this circle. Yoon Shirshir rested her chin on her hand and looked at the center of the set. The crew was still busy preparing the props. She suddenly asked, "What about you?" Chapter 1740. How did you get into this industry? Hua Jin's expression changed all of a sudden. His expression turned cold as he retorted, "Do you think I like acting that much?" "What do you mean? I got into this industry a few years earlier than you, so I've seen through the fickleness of the entertainment industry. Sometimes I feel tired of it, but even if I'm tired of it, I have no choice but to submit to the rules of this industry." Hua Jin paused, then turned to look at her. "Do you know how much I envy you?" Yoon Shirshir was confused by his sudden question. "You asked me how I got into this industry, but rather than saying I got in, it's more like I was sent in." "Sent?" "Yeah. I got into this industry because my father sold me." Hua Jin answered with a lonely expression. Yoon Shirshir was shocked. "Sold?" She looked at him in surprise, thinking that he was joking. How could there be such a father who would sell his own son into this industry? For the first time in her life, she had the desire to find out more about Hua Jin's background. Yoon Shirshir's gaze was a little surprised. She hurriedly asked, "What do you mean by that? What do you mean by your father sold you into this industry?" "Because my father lost a lot of money in gambling and owed a huge debt. He couldn't pay it back, so he sold me to the creditor." As Hua Jin spoke, his lips suddenly curled into a cold smile. He laughed at himself. "Isn't it funny? I didn't dare to believe that he would do that back then. I was only 15 years old at the time." Under Hua Jin's nonchalant and seemingly casual narration, Yoon Shirshir gradually learned about his story. Actually, Hua Jin was originally born into a wealthy family. His father was a senior executive in a foreign company, while his mother ran a business. The financial crisis of 1998 engulfed the whole of Asia, causing this originally wealthy family to fall into a deadlock. Hua Jin's mother's business went bankrupt. Not only that, but the foreign company that Hua Jin's father worked in also suffered quite a bit of damage. Because Hua Jin's mother went bankrupt, the whole family was dragged into a huge debt. Hua Jin's father saw that at a critical juncture, he took the unconventional sword and secretly embezzled a large sum of money to fill the hole in the debt. Once the matter was exposed, he couldn't pay it back. He was sued and finally sentenced to prison. 10 years in prison made things worse for this family, which was already treading on thin ice. When he was young, Hua Jin was very well. Even though he had a hard time, he never complained. In the 5th year of his father's life, his mother couldn't take it anymore. Calm. Hua Jin's father found out about this in prison and fell ill. After he was released from prison, Hua Jin's father couldn't find a job because of his financial crimes. His ability was extraordinary and outstanding, but other than ability, the company paid more attention to the employee's character. Looking at his resume, he had a criminal record. Who would hire him? Thus, without a stable job, Hua Jin's father could only work at a construction site. The huge difference in life, falling from the top to the bottom, was hard for him to accept. Chapter 1741. As a result, he started drinking and gambling. Every time he lost money, he would drink and get drunk. When he saw Hua Jin, it was as if he saw Hua Jin's mother, that fickle woman. When he thought about how she had left with another man while he was in prison, he felt extremely vexed and would use his belt to beat him. The young Hua Jin had no idea why his father would beat him every time he got drunk. What was worse was that because of his long-term gambling, Hua Jin's father's meager income from the construction site was not enough to repay his debts. As a result, in his memory, he always seemed to be drifting from city to city in a sorry state. In the end, when the creditor came knocking on his door, Hua Jin's father hardened his heart and sold him. That man tossed and turned in bed and finally sold him to a sugar daddy. This sugar daddy was quite powerful and controlled the shares of an entertainment management company. He had signed many artists under him, and they were all stunners. Of course, whether it was women or men, he played very fiercely. When he saw Hua Jin, he felt that if this otherworldly youth entered the entertainment industry and was groomed, he would definitely become a signature idol. When that time came, he would be a money tree. Hua Jin said this and did not continue. It seemed that those embarrassing memories should come to an end. He did not want to say it out loud, afraid that she would hate him for being dirty. When Yun Shirshir heard this, she was stunned for a long time. She still looked incredulous. I don't believe it. I don't believe that there is such a father in this world. You are his biological son. How could he do that? The world is so big. There are all kinds of strange things. Hua Jin looked indifferent. When this matter was brought up, there was no change in his expression from beginning to end. It was as if he was narrating something that had nothing to do with him. Anyway, it's all in the past. So, entering this industry is not of my own volition. After a pause, he laughed mockingly and said, Actually, I really hate acting. I don't understand why some people like acting. According to the script, acting a character that is completely different from their own character to gain the audience's favor. Will this give rise to a sense of superiority? What was the difference between this and the actors of ancient times? I didn't like to play along with the audience's emotions. No matter how sad I was, I couldn't show it on my face. Isn't that tiring? Yun Shirshir looked pensive, but said indifferently, Everyone has their own aspirations. Hua Jin suddenly wrapped his arms around his knees and rested his chin on his knees. His gaze was desolate. Sometimes I feel as sad as a clown. Perhaps when others are used to your smile, they can't see the true loneliness in your heart. You obviously want to cry, but you have to pretend to smile. Others smile, but what about yourself? But I feel even more lonely. Yun Shirshir sized him up. She found that he seemed to like this kind of action very much. From a psychological point of view, people who liked to sit like this were often filled with loneliness and vulnerability. They lacked a sense of security and were very sensitive to everything. Yun Shirshir turned to look at him sideways. Hua Jin was staring at the ground with his eyelashes drooping. Under the makeup, his fair and beautiful face exuded the unique aura of a man in ancient costume. But at this moment he seemed especially lonely. Yun Shirshir felt pity for him and couldn't help but want to comfort him. Chapter 1742. Hua Jin, don't be sad. Everything will be fine. Before she could finish her sentence, all of a sudden, a sinister smile broke out on the man's face. Ha, you've been fooled, haven't you? He pointed at her. Seeing her sad expression, he mocked, Shirshir, you're so funny. I was just joking and you took it for real. You're so gullible. You? Yun Shirshir turned pale with fright. She was so angry that she laughed. You were lying to me? What do you mean by lying? Hua Jin felt wronged. I was just too bored. So I was just joking with you. I didn't expect you to take it for real. It's so funny. Yun Shirshir was so angry that she was at a loss for words. Her face was ashen. Hua Jin carefully observed her expression. Seeing that she was really angry, he was at a loss for what to do. He pursed his lips and pitifully pulled on her sleeve like a helpless child who had made a mistake. With a sad face, he said, All right, I was wrong. I won't joke with you anymore. What I said just now was all a lie. Don't take it for real. Okay? I entered the entertainment industry because I'm pretty. I was born to be in this bowl of rice. Other than acting, I have no other way out. I'm such an idiot. I actually believed your nonsense. Do you know that I took it for real just now? I even felt sad for you. I didn't expect you to be lying. Yun Shirshir was unusually angry. Why did you lie to me? She asked angrily. Because I think you're very kind. That way you'll take pity on me and treat me well. Hua Jin smiled. Slap. What he got in response was a cold slap. She did not use much strength. She only did it subconsciously because she was angry from embarrassment. Hua Jin held his aching cheek and stared at her helplessly. His eyes flashed with helplessness and confusion. Shirshir. Don't call my name like that. Who would joke about someone else's sympathy? You're too much. Yoon Shirshir still hadn't calmed down. She found it funny and said, "You actually want to get other people's sympathy and let me pity you? Hua Jin, your joke is too much." Hua Jin was increasingly at a loss. He looked at her somewhat uneasily and tentatively tugged on her sleeve. Shirshir, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I won't joke with you in the future." Yoon Shirshir suddenly waved his hand away and said coldly, "Stop pestering me. I'm gonna film now." With that, she stood up abruptly, threw the script into his arms, and left. Hua Jin looked innocently at her back as she left. He bit his lips and looked like he was about to cry. It was already 2 in the morning when Yoon Shirshir and Lin Ji finished their scenes together. When she left the set, Hua Jin was still sitting in his seat, looking at her with an innocent expression. Even if he wanted to go up and talk to her, he didn't have the courage. Yoon Shirshir didn't look at him and left. She went home. Hua Jin sat there in a daze and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. "You actually want to get other people's sympathy and let me pity you? Hua Jin, your joke is too much." Yoon Shirshir's angry words still echoed in his ears. Hua Jin touched his cheek and bit his lip. He felt like crying. Perhaps it was a little childish to use sympathy to get close to someone you liked. Chapter 1743. Perhaps it was a little childish to approach the person he liked by gaining sympathy. However, he was a little clumsy. It seemed that other than that, he did not know how to attract her attention. Preparations for the engagement ceremony were in full swing. Wuxia did not have many relatives and friends. There were only about 30 people. Most of them were important figures in Shengyu Company, including Lu Jinyu. Yoon Shirshir, on the other hand, had even fewer relatives and friends. The engagement ceremony was set to be held on an island. Wuxia had meticulously prepared a beach engagement ceremony. Of course, these were all secretly prepared behind Yoon Shirshir's back. He wanted to give her a surprise. Yoon Shirshir did not know about this. Yoon Shirshir had also slowly sent out the invitations that she had prepared. However, on the way to deliver the invitations, an accident happened. Perhaps it was because she was a little tired from filming the night before, but when she was driving, she accidentally bumped into a passerby. She was a middle-aged woman in her 40s. When Yoon Shirshir was making a left turn, she suddenly sped off the road for some unknown reason. When she tried to stop the car, she failed to do so and ended up crashing to the ground. When Yoon Shirshir got out of the car, she saw the woman lying on the ground hugging her knees. She wailed in pain as if she was in a lot of pain. The first thing she said when she saw Yoon Shirshir was to accuse her of driving carelessly and then ask her to send her to the hospital. Yoon Shirshir had never encountered such a thing before. Afraid that she would be seriously injured, she hurriedly sent her to the hospital. As soon as she arrived at the hospital, the woman clamored for a full-body checkup. Yoon Shirshir naturally thought that her life was more important, so she accompanied her to register and paid for the medical expenses. Then, there was a few hours of waiting. When the full-body checkup was done, the report showed that she had a slight concussion and a relatively minor soft tissue contusion. Soon, the family members rushed to the hospital. Seeing that the injury was not serious, Yoon Shirshir asked for a private chat. In her heart, she thought that since the collision was not serious, she would pay for all the medical expenses, as well as some compensation for lost work and nutrition. However, the woman's family demanded an exorbitant sum of 50,000 yuan for her medical expenses. Yoon Shirshir was dumbfounded. She had never encountered such a situation before. Immediately, she raised her doubts and said, "Didn't the medical report say that the collision wasn't serious? It was just a little soft tissue contusion and a concussion. The doctor didn't even ask for hospitalization. Why is the compensation so high?" On the other side, the family member said eloquently, "You injured my sister. Look, take a look at the report from the doctor. High blood pressure. High blood pressure. If it weren't for your scare, would her blood pressure be so high? Do you know how serious the consequences are? If your blood pressure is too high, you'll have a cerebral hemorrhage. If it's light, he'll have a stroke. If it's serious, he'll lose his life. Do you know that? My uncle died of a cerebral hemorrhage. If it weren't for you, would my mother be like this? A few family members surrounded her aggressively, as if they were interrogating an unforgivable criminal. Yun Shirshir furrowed her brows. She had thought that it was just a normal accident and that she would be able to get out of it after paying compensation. She had not expected that she would encounter such weirdos. Chapter 1744. Yun Shirshir did not want to argue with them. After all, it was not easy for these people to come to the city to work. Coincidentally, she still had a sum of money on her. She estimated that she had about 10,000 yuan, which was more than enough to compensate them. Thus, she negotiated, I don't want to argue with you, but I don't have 50,000 yuan on me. How about this? I'll compensate you 15,000 yuan, and this matter will be considered settled. Okay? When the family members saw this, they were furious. So what if you're rich? Can you humiliate people like this just because you're rich? 15,000 yuan? Are you King trying to dismiss a beggar? You want to leave after paying 15,000 yuan. Is that even possible? That's right. 50,000 yuan. Not a cent less. Yun Shirshir narrowed her eyes. Before she could say anything, the family members started chattering again. Not only this medical fee, but you also have to pay for my sister's subsequent hospitalization fees. Other than the medical fees, there's also the compensation for my sister's loss of work, nutrition, and psychological damage. How traumatized was my sister in this car accident? You have to compensate for all of this. So 50,000 yuan, not a cent less. Yun Shirshir did not know whether to laugh or cry. Oh, I can see it now. What do you mean? You're obviously trying to extort me, right? As soon as she said that, everyone was shocked. She continued, From the way you talk, I can tell that you're not very educated. You're simply spouting nonsense. Yes, I admit that I was careless when driving and accidentally hit you. I'll take responsibility for this, and I'll also admit to this mistake. I've also paid for the medical fees, but the doctor said that it's just some superficial injuries. These injuries can be treated with a few hundred yuan. I'm already very decent for compensating you with 15,000 yuan. Also, please don't use high blood pressure and high blood sugar to talk about this. Go and ask the doctor if hitting someone can cause high blood pressure and high blood sugar. These illnesses are not external injuries. Now you're pushing the blame on me and asking me to take responsibility. That doesn't make sense, does it? One of the most hot-tempered men rushed forward and pointed his finger at her. Are you slandering us? Are you slandering me? We're just asking for some compensation for the medical expenses. And you're saying that we're extorting you. As he spoke, he stepped forward and grabbed her hand. But Yun Shirshir pushed his hand away warily. Just speak properly. Don't touch me. Get physical? Are you trying to frame me? Have we tried to reason with you? Wasn't he being reasonable? Are you listening? This man seemed to have a fierce temper. He looked very tall and very strong. The muscles on his arms, as well as his ferocious eyes, shocked Yun Shirshir quite a bit. Yun Shirshir was a little impatient, so she said, Originally, I wanted to propose a private settlement and didn't want to bother about this matter. But since you said so, how about this? My car has car insurance. I'll call the insurance company and ask them to come over and take responsibility. Let's see how they deal with it, okay? As she spoke, she picked up her phone and walked to the side to call the insurance company. She had just dialed the number of the insurance company when the man strode forward and slapped her phone to the ground. Chapter 1745. The man pointed at her and said angrily, Are you trying to run away after hitting someone? What? Run away? Why would she run away? The other family members were also agitated. They swarmed forward and surrounded her. Each of them held one of her hands, and someone even went forward and snatched her handbag away. One of the women deliberately raised her voice and said, Are you trying to run away? Are you trying to run away after hitting someone? Yun Shirshir was extremely helpless. Without waiting for her to explain further, the others surrounded Yun Shirshir and shouted at the passers-by who were watching the commotion, Hey, come and see. This woman hit someone and wants to run away without paying the medical fees. This is a hit and run. She wants to run away without paying the compensation. Everyone, come over and judge for us. Yoon Shirshir explained, I'm not running away. I'm making a call. Calling for help, right? Just like in the news, they ask the gangsters to bully honest migrant workers like us, right? Following their shouting, more and more passers-by came to watch. Many of the patients' family members who were waiting for their packages to be checked at the hospital saw that there was a situation here. So they all gathered around to see what was going on. Hence, these family members grabbed others and started to complain to them. We all came to the capital from Wuyang to work. My sister was working at a construction site and was hit by this woman on her way home. After a full body checkup, what was the result? It was very serious. This woman said that she didn't want to take responsibility and wanted to run away after making a call. Does this count as running away? That's right. Our family isn't doing well. There are 7 of us. My sister worked hard at the construction site to earn money to support the family. In the end, she was hit by an unexpected accident. Now she's lying in the hospital, and the family's expenses are cut off. Everyone, please be reasonable. We worked so hard to come to the capital to work, but we were hit by a car. Is it too much to ask her for compensation? It's not too much, right? Everyone was chattering away, one after another, one after another. Yoon Shirshir's family members had the advantage in numbers. Relying on their eloquence, they kept brainwashing the onlookers. She was outnumbered and felt like she was in a whirlpool. For a moment, she couldn't defend herself. She finally understood what it meant by summer insects can't talk about ice. In an instant, the public opinion changed. Many onlookers began to point at Yoon Shirshir as they gossiped about her. Yoon Shirshir only felt her ears buzzing, as if countless flies were surrounding her ears. It was extremely noisy. Suddenly, someone in the crowd pointed at Yoon Shirshir and said, Yoon Shirshir. Ah, I recognize this woman. No wonder he looked so familiar. So she's a superstar. I recognize it too. Didn't you shoot an advertisement and appear in an international fashion show before? The family member said, so she's a big celebrity. Once they found out that Yoon Shirshir was a big celebrity, many people began to take pictures of Yoon Shirshir with their phones. Yoon Shirshir covered her face with her collar. However, her actions made more people think that she was obviously guilty. Chapter 1746. After a pause, the woman yelled again. So you're a superstar. I'm warning you. If you don't compensate us, I'll expose you to the media. How dare you not compensate us for our medical expenses when you caused a car accident? Can you let me call the insurance company? Even if you want me to compensate, you should at least let me withdraw the money, right? Yoon Shirshir was about to burst into tears from their unreasonable behavior. However, the family member said relentlessly, what do you mean withdraw the money? You're just trying to run away with the money, aren't you? Don't think we don't know what you're thinking. Despicable. Shameless. Yoon Shirshir was so angry that tears welled up in her eyes. When a scholar met a soldier, there was really no way to reason with him. On the other hand, Lu Jinyu had just walked into the emergency room lobby when he saw many people crowding outside. A delicate-looking woman stood in the middle of the crowd. Her face was flushed red as she looked around helplessly. This hospital was under the control of the Shengyu Financial Group. Previously, due to poor management, this hospital was later acquired by the Shengyu Financial Group as a non-performing asset. Under the management of the Shengyu Financial Group, it had become one of the leading hospitals in the medical industry in the capital city. He had come to the hospital this time because the hospital needed to import a large number of medical equipment. At the same time, he wanted to inspect the situation. When he was about to leave, he realized that the emergency room was surrounded by curious passers-by. Hence, he walked over to take a look out of curiosity. After finding out that a woman had hit someone, she wanted to run away without compensation. However, he was laughing in his heart. In this era, which car on the road didn't have commercial insurance? In the capital city market, most of the insurance shares for cars were at least 1 million yuan. If the driver didn't run away on the spot after hitting someone, it meant that the driver was responsible. After calling the police and arriving at the hospital, The rest was up to the insurance company. How could she run away? Hence, he pushed through the crowd, cleared his throat and said, "Excuse me, may I interrupt? May I ask what's the situation?" As soon as he finished speaking, the male family member shouted unreasonably, "Who are you? It's not your place to interfere." However, Lu Jinyu smiled elegantly. In front of the unreasonable man, he was as polite as a gentleman. "I'm the person in charge of this hospital. With so many of you gathered here, it will affect the hospital negatively. I definitely have the responsibility and obligation to understand the situation." After a pause, he calmly asked the man, "Now, may I ask if I have the right to intervene in this matter?" Upon hearing that Lu Jinyu was the person in charge of the hospital, the man immediately straightened his attitude. However, Lu Jinyu caught the fleeting look of guilt on his face. There seemed to be something fishy about this. Logically speaking, since he was a weakling, he should be confident. What did he have to feel guilty about? So he asked, "What's going on?" His politeness and excellent character made the people around him quiet down in an instant. The family members were also strangely quiet. Lu Jinyu glanced at Yun Shirshir and saw that she was standing on the spot with her arms crossed. It was obvious that she had just experienced an intense friction. His gaze landed on her arm, only to see that there were scratches on the back of her hand and wrist that were exposed to the air. Chapter 1747. Why did it seem like she was the one being bullied? Hence, he asked gently, "Madam, can you explain the situation to me?" Yun Shirshir raised her head to look at him. She was subconsciously wary of him, but when she heard his gentle and courteous voice, she let her guard down and slowly said, "I bumped into someone and sent her to the hospital. I paid for her medical fees and did a full body checkup for her. The report said that she had a mild concussion and abrasions, but it wasn't particularly serious. So I want to pay a few thousand yuan to settle the matter." A mild concussion sounds serious, but it's actually not a big deal. Generally speaking, even a slap can cause a concussion. It won't be much of a problem after some rest. As for the abrasions, at this point, Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "In the hospital, such injuries can be resolved with a maximum of 300 yuan. You're already being very responsible by paying a few thousand yuan." When Yun Shirshir heard his words, it was as if she had met her savior. Her eyes instantly turned red with grievance. "But the victim's family came over and asked me to pay 50,000 yuan. I felt that their request was too ridiculous and suspected that they were blackmailing me. So I said to call the insurance company and get them to settle it." Lu Jinyu asked, "Have you called the police?" When they heard that they were going to call the police, the family members suddenly became flustered. They looked at each other nervously. They couldn't help but want to go forward and try to befriend Lu Jinyu. However, Lu Jinyu politely stopped them. "Speak one by one, okay? I asked you just now, but you didn't say anything. I don't want to hear it now." Yun Shirshir sighed inwardly. This man looks gentle on the surface, but why is his style of speaking so domineering? As he spoke, he gave off the feeling that there was a knife hidden behind his smile and he was imposing without being angry. Lu Jinyu didn't know what she was thinking. He turned to look at her and said with a smile, "You haven't answered me yet." I didn't call the police." "Silly girl. Such a matter should be dealt with by the police immediately." Lu Jinyu asked again. Then, "Have you called the insurance company?" Yun Shirshir said cruelly, "It's been a few years since I got my driver's license, but it's only been a month or so since I started driving. Encountering such a situation, I'm indeed a little confused." Lu Jinyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Don't you know that sometimes when you're driving on the road, it's not the car that hits someone, but the person that hits the car?" "What do you mean?" "What a silly girl. Stand aside and don't say anything, okay?" Lu Jinyu raised an eyebrow. His elegant yet domineering way of speaking reminded her of Muyaja. He felt an inexplicable sense of security. She smiled gratefully, but didn't say anything else. Lu Jinyu walked up to a few family members. There were more than a dozen of them. Even if each of them said a word, it was enough to drown Yun Shirshir. There was no room for her to speak. Chapter 1748. Upon hearing that they were going to call the police, the few of them panicked. Only the man pretended to be calm and said, "I don't think there's a need to call the police, right? What can the police say? She was the one who injured her. Since she wants to take responsibility, why don't we just pay the compensation? As long as the compensation is paid, we won't pursue any responsibility." Lu Jinyu curled his lips and smiled. "How much is the compensation? 50,000 yuan? Yes. Is 50,000 yuan a lot?" The man said, "She drives a Mercedes-Benz. Since she can afford to drive a Mercedes-Benz, 50,000 yuan shouldn't be a big deal to her. She won't lose anything by compensating her." Lu Jinyu nodded. Compensation is not a problem. Yun Shishir was a little surprised. She vaguely wondered if this man was helping her. Why did he say that compensation was not a problem? These people were obviously extorting her. He couldn't have believed their words, could he? When the family member heard this, he was about to nod in satisfaction when Lu Jinyu said, "But the amount you're asking for, I suspect that you're extorting her." Extorting her? Lu Jinyu's aura was so strong that it completely suppressed the scene. No one dared to interrupt him when he spoke. When the family member heard this, he was stunned and stared at him with wide eyes. "Don't you think it's too much to ask for 50,000 yuan as compensation for a soft tissue injury and a mild concussion? According to the law, this is already considered extortion. Furthermore, I suspect that you're fraudsters." The scene was very quiet, so the onlookers could hear Lu Jinyu's calm and rational offer. When they heard that these people were asking for 50,000 yuan as compensation, everyone came to a realization. After hearing Lu Jinyu's analysis, everyone started to discuss and wonder if these people were extorting her. Why would they have to pay 50,000 yuan for such a minor injury? Lu Jinyu continued, "However, I don't have any evidence at all." When the family member heard this, he immediately argued, "That's right. You have no evidence at all. What do you mean by extortion? We're all honest migrant workers. We wouldn't dare to do such a thing." "Let me finish." Lu Jinyu said, "There's no evidence, but there are surveillance cameras on the road now. We can call the police and get the surveillance footage. Then the truth will be revealed, won't it?" The family members thought to themselves, "We've met a smart man." Everyone looked at each other. For a moment, they were in a deadlock. Lu Jinyu picked up his cell phone and called the police. When those people heard that he was calling the police, they wanted to escape. However, they were stopped by the security guards who came to maintain order. The police soon arrived at the scene. Since Lu Jinyu had called the police station attached great importance to it. Hence, a police officer led the team. When he saw that it was Lu Jinyu, he said respectfully, "Mr. Lu, nice to meet you. May I ask?" Lu Jinyu briefly explained the situation to them. The police quickly understood the situation. After a brief understanding of the situation, they brought these people back to the police station to record their statements. Yun Shishir was also informed to go to the police station. Before she left, she walked up to Lu Jinyu and thanked him sincerely. "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know what to do." Chapter 1749. Yun Shishir nodded. "What's your name? To show my gratitude, I'll treat you to a cup of tea when we're free." Lu Jinyu agreed. Sure. How could he reject a beautiful woman's invitation? Moreover, she was such a beautiful woman. In his heart, he thought that maybe he could also be like his boss and have the hope of getting naked. Hence, he said, "My surname is Lu, and my name is Jinyu. You can call me Jinyu." "Hello, Mr. Lu. Thank you so much for today. What about you?" Lu Jinyu's gaze landed on her face. "What's your name?" "Yun Shishir." Yun Shishir said generously. The next second, the smile on Lu Jinyu's face froze. "Yun what?" Yun Shishir's expression froze for a moment. "Yun Shishir." Yun Shishir. He couldn't help but be surprised. What a familiar name. That seemed to be the name of his boss's wife. Could it be such a coincidence? Lu Jinyu hesitated for a moment and decided to verify it. "Do you know Mu Yaja?" Yun Shishir was also stunned. Yes. Lu Jinyu was speechless. After holding it in for a long time, he suddenly said, "Sister-in-law." Yoon Shirshir was confused by his sudden call of sister-in-law. She sized him up in confusion. "What did you call me?" "Sister-in-law." Lu Jinyu smiled helplessly. It seemed that his dream of breaking through his singlehood was shattered. After so many turns, it turned out to be his sister-in-law. It seemed that the world was really small sometimes. Yoon Shirshir was still in a daze. She asked curiously, "Have we met somewhere before?" "Ha ha ha. Sister-in-law, why are you so cute?" Lu Jinyu thought to himself. When he first saw this woman, his first impression was that she was a little clumsy and silly. She stood helplessly in the crowd like a punching bag who had been bullied. Her face was flushed red, and she was out of her wits. However, he didn't expect that after going around in circles, it was his sister-in-law. "Let's go. Sister-in-law, let me treat you to a cup of tea." Lu Jinyu put his arm around her shoulders intimately. Facing the intimate touch of the opposite sex, she avoided him in disgust. "You must have mistaken me for someone else. I'm not your sister-in-law. Wuxia is my elder brother. According to seniority, I should address you as my sister-in-law," Lu Jinyu said matter-of-factly. "Wuxia is your big brother?" "Yes." "What a coincidence." Yoon Shirshir looked a little confused. "What coincidence?" "Haha, I'm a little surprised too. I didn't expect to meet you here." "Thank you. But forget about the tea. I still have to go to the police station later." "No need. If you go to the police station, it's just a procedure. I'll just let them file it." Lu Jinyu invited her into the car without any explanation. Along the way, Yoon Shirshir felt like she was in a fantasy. Why did she feel like a little white rabbit that was so easily abducted by a big bad wolf with bad intentions? When they reached the cafe, Yoon Shirshir was still a little skeptical. It was not until Lu Jinyu took out an engagement invitation from his briefcase that she believed him. She had personally written the invitation letter. After ordering a few cups of coffee, Lu Jinyu lost his cool and elegance. He couldn't hide the excitement on his face as he stared at Yoon Shirshir again and again. So, this was the legendary sister-in-law. She was very different from what he had imagined. Chapter 1750. If Yoon Shirshir knew what Lu Jinyu thought of her, she would probably not know whether to laugh or cry. Seeing that Lu Jinyu was silently sizing her up, Yoon Shirshir felt uncomfortable all over and smiled awkwardly. "Mr. Lu, you seem to be looking at me." "Mr. Lu?" Lu Jinyu was once again amused by how she addressed him. He couldn't help but tease her. "Sister-in-law, you don't have to be so formal. Just call me Jinyu." "Jinyu?" "Yes." "But..." Yoon Shirshir hesitated and pursed her lips. "Isn't this a little inappropriate?" "Why would it be inappropriate? Just call me that. Calling me Mr. Lu will inevitably make me feel distant." Lu Jinyu picked up his coffee cup and took a sip. His eyes were curved like two crescent moons, clear and charming. Unlike his previous cold and noble demeanor, the current him seemed very approachable. "You and my boss have been brothers for many years. We can be considered comrades who have fought together. We've been friends for so many years, so don't be so formal." Yoon Shirshir didn't argue and smiled slightly. "Okay." Lu Jinyu pursed his lips, but his smiling eyes were still sizing her up. Yoon Shirshir instinctively reached out and touched her cheek, thinking that there was something strange on her face. Seeing her actions, Lu Jinyu thought to himself that he had probably overstepped his boundaries by constantly sizing her up. Hence, he smiled politely and said, "Sister-in-law, Jinyu is being presumptuous. I shouldn't be staring at you like that. It's okay. However, I'm staring at you not because of anything else, but because I'm really curious about the charm of the woman that boss has taken a fancy to." Yoon Shirshir's gaze shifted slightly. For a moment, she didn't understand what he meant. Lu Jinyu was afraid that her imagination would run wild, so he hurriedly explained, "Sister-in-law, don't misunderstand. Although it's a little presumptuous, I don't mean anything else. But, sister-in-law, do you know? You're boss's first and only woman. At first, when I found out that boss was married, I was so shocked that my eyeballs almost popped out. Yoon Shirshir was amused by his funny words. She covered her mouth and laughed secretly. How can it be so exaggerated? How should I put it? In his impression, the boss was an ambitious person. He was cold-blooded and iron-fisted. His actions were swift and decisive. His abilities were extraordinary. Those who coveted his women would flock to him like a flock of ducks. I'm not exaggerating. The number of women who want to climb up the social ladder can line up from here to Paris. However, boss has always been cold and aloof. In terms of women, he has never touched anything. Lu Jinyu had always been curious. Did Mu Yaja not have any physical needs? In his memory, his impression of Mu Yaja was that of a workaholic. Work. Apart from work, he was busy. When the Xingyu Financial Group was first established, he spent half of the year flying around the world. He was so busy that he didn't have any free time. Apart from work, Mu Yaja's occasional hobbies were probably to play billiards, golf, or go to the fencing gym to pass the time. This routine and hobbies, no matter how he looked at it, he suspected that he was middle-aged. He was only 28 years old, but he was like an old cadre. He didn't have the vigor of a young man at all. Chapter 1751. Back then, Lu Jinyu had also developed some mischievous interests. He deliberately hid his purpose and took Mu Yaja to the bar to hunt for women. The problem was that when they arrived at the bar, Mu Yaja was like an ice block. He just sat in the private room and drank silently, as if he had nothing to do with it. He silently watched the men and women in the bar dance without restraint. His cold expression was a stark contrast to the drunken demeanor of the people in the bar. From the private room he was sitting in, it was almost as if he was in two different worlds from the dance floor. One side was in full swing, while the other side was cold. Lu Jinyu thought to himself, boss really doesn't know how to enjoy life. At such an occasion, he was not in a hurry to catch his prey. Instead, he was calm and composed. Like a profound veteran, he sat in the corner and casually tasted his wine. When it came to his career, he was very ambitious. Why did he seem so indifferent when it came to women? Men all had their biological needs. Could it be that boss had no feelings for women at all? But she had never seen him show any interest in any man before. Lu Jinyu even suspected that his boss was frigid. Of course, this was just a silent criticism in his heart. If Mu Yaja knew that he thought of him that way, who knew what he would do to him? Lu Jinyu had also found a few women with clean backgrounds for Mu Yaja. He sent them to his side, but they were all mercilessly chased away by him. After a futile effort, Lu Jinyu simply gave up. He thought that boss was probably devoted to his career and did not have the heart to care about other things. However, it was not until recently that he learned that Mu Yaja was married. This news was like a sudden clap of thunder that blasted him on the outside and made him tender on the inside. That was why Lu Jinyu was so curious about Yoon Shirshir. Sister-in-law, you're different from what I imagined. Lu Jinyu told Yoon Shirshir truthfully. Different? Yoon Shirshir was a little surprised. What's different? I thought that boss's woman would be the daughter of a rich family, noble and proud. But the feeling you give me is like what? Yoon Shirshir was a little curious. What did he think of her? Oh, don't be angry if I tell you. I'm not angry. Lu Jinyu held back his laughter and said, like a little white rabbit. Little? Yoon Shirshir was at a loss for words. Lu Jinyu couldn't help but laugh at her adorable expression. Haha, that's the expression, it's so similar. Why do you say that I'm like a little white rabbit? Yoon Shirshir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She looks very weak, like she would fall with a gust of wind. She looks very easy to bully. However, it's not strange that boss likes you. Sister-in-law gives people the feeling that she can easily arouse a man's desire to protect her. Lu Jinyu paused for a moment before asking, you're about to hold your engagement ceremony. I'm sincerely happy for you and boss. I believe in boss foresight. Since he has chosen you, he will protect you forever. I wish you all happiness. Yoon Shirshir smiled. Thank you. The police station called to ask why Yoon Shirshir hadn't arrived at the police station. Lu Jinyu took the call and explained the situation. The police officer on the other end chuckled and said, Hey, Actually, it's not a big deal. Since she's Mr. Lu's friend, this matter is very easy to handle. Chapter 1752. Lu Jinyu took the call and explained the situation. The police officer on the other end chuckled and said, "Hey, actually, it's not a big deal. Since they're Mr. Lu's friends, this matter will be easy to handle." It turned out that those people were a gang of punxi scammers. They had been committing punxi for more than a dozen times. This gang was especially interesting. They didn't touch anything else but luxury cars. They didn't even look at cars that cost more than 100,000 yuan. They were certain that since they drove luxury cars, they would definitely be rich. When encountering such a matter, they definitely wouldn't want to waste any time. If they could solve it with money, they would try their best to keep the peace and not be calculative. Such rich people were especially easy to deal with. Tens of thousands of yuan were nothing to them. They had already committed more than a dozen crimes, and none of them had failed. Their usual routine was to stand at the intersection of the street and see a luxury car driving over. If the car was slow, they would pounce on it like a moth to a flame. Then, they would crash into the car and beg the car owner to send them to the hospital. Even if the car owner wanted to call the police to deal with it, when they saw the person lying on the ground and rolling around in pain, they were afraid that the loss would outweigh the gain if they delayed and caused a death. Hence, they rushed to the hospital. They called the gang to disguise themselves as family members, do a full body checkup, and ask for a sum of compensation to settle the matter privately. Most people couldn't be bothered to make a fuss and just settled the matter with money. Unfortunately, they met Lu Jinyu today, and he was in control of the situation. That was why they stumbled and fell into Lu Jinyu's hands. Hence, Yun Shishir was also very grateful to Lu Jinyu for helping her out. After hanging up the call, Lu Jinyu found that her phone screen was cracked, so he said that he would go to the mall to buy her a new phone. Yun Shishir hurriedly refused. However, Lu Jinyu was very insistent and said to her, "Since this happened on my territory as the person in charge, I naturally have to take responsibility. Sister-in-law, this is what I should do. Don't stand on ceremony, okay?" Yun Shishir couldn't refuse, so she braced herself and nodded. Lu Jinyu drove her to the mall. As she was a public figure, it wasn't appropriate for her to appear in crowded places. Hence, he considerately asked her to wait in the car and hurriedly left. 10 minutes later, he came back with the latest model of Apple. He helped her send the information and changed the card. Yun Shishir smiled gratefully. "Thank you for your help today. Sister-in-law, if you continue to treat me like an outsider, I'm going to get angry with you." Lu Jinyu pretended to be angry. In the end, Lu Jinyu drove her home and got someone to drive her car back. Coincidentally, Mu Yaja returned home, and the three of them bumped into each other. When Mu Yaja got out of the car, he saw the car parked at the entrance of the villa. Lu Jinyu was holding Yun Shishir's hand and helping her out of the car. His gaze landed on Lu Jinyu's hand that was supporting Yun Shishir, and his eyes turned cold instantly. As soon as Lu Jinyu turned around, he saw Mu Yaja standing behind him. Mu Yaja's cold gaze landed on his hand, which was wrapped around Yun Shishir's shoulder. He felt as if he was being pricked by needles. He was so scared that he instinctively retracted his hand and smiled awkwardly. "B-boss. Damn it. Oh no. How could it be so unlucky? Ah. Did boss misunderstand that he was deliberately taking advantage of sister-in-law?" Chapter 1753. His gaze was like a tiger eyeing its prey, as if he was a lord whose territory had been invaded by other lions. His gaze gradually turned cold, as if he wanted to strangle someone into nothingness. But he was greatly wronged. The car he was driving was a George Patton, which was very tall. Hence, he was afraid that Yun Shishir would lose her balance after getting out of the car in high heels. Thus, he kindly helped to support her. If he was mistaken for taking advantage of her, he would not be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. When Yun Shishir saw Mu Yaja, she was stunned. "You're back, Chief." However, Lu Jinyu looked like he wanted to say something. He thought that he should at least explain something, but if he did, it would seem like he was trying to hide something. It was a little too obvious. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. Mu Yaja stared at him coldly. Why are you here? His tone was so cold that it made Lu Jinyu shiver. He said with a long face, something happened, so I sent sister-in-law back on the way. What happened? Yun Shirshir immediately explained. Lu Jinyu looked as aggrieved as a deer, blinking innocently at him. After hearing the whole story, Mu Yaja's expression gradually softened. Seeing that his face had regained some warmth, Lu Jinyu heaved a sigh of relief. Since you've sent her back, you should go back. Mu Yaja walked forward and pulled Yun Shirshir into his arms. Looking at him, he mercilessly asked him to leave. Lu Jinyu felt as if a knife had been stabbed in his heart. Chief, I just arrived, and you're chasing me away? Aren't you going to ask me to stay for a cup of tea? You can drink tea anytime. We don't lack this bit of effort. Mu Yaja's tone was firm. When Lu Jinyu heard this, he could only give up. He nodded and smiled helplessly. All right, I won't ask you to stay. I'll leave first. After that, he said goodbye to Yun Shirshir and drove away. Mu Yaja brought Yun Shirshir into the house. As soon as he stepped through the door, he asked in a deep voice, "Why didn't you call me immediately after something like this happened?" There was an inexplicable anger in his question. Even though she explained it casually, Mu Yaja's heart ached when he heard it. This stupid woman was so small. She was surrounded by so many people in such a situation. She was pointed at and bullied by so many people. She didn't know how helpless she was. She should have called him as soon as possible. As her man, the first person to stand up for her when she was in trouble wasn't him. This more or less made him a little angry. Yun Shirshir saw that he seemed to be angry and knew that he was worried. She stuttered a little and replied, I might have been a little confused at the time. Confused? Mu Yaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he asked, You're usually so sharp-tongued. Why? Were you confused when you were bullied by outsiders? There were so many of them. They surrounded me. At that time, my mind was blank. Besides, how could I have thought of calling you for help at that time? If I didn't think of me when I was in trouble, who else could I think of? Chapter 1754. It's all in the past. Don't be angry. I'm fine now. Yun Shirshir paused and said, Besides, you have a lot of work to do. What if you're busy when I call you? Won't that disturb you? Little idiot. Mu Yaja knocked on her head and enunciated each word clearly. Remember this. No matter how important it is, it's not as important as you. Yun Shirshir was stunned. Although his tone was stiff, it warmed her heart. He said, No matter how important it is, it's not as important as me. It turned out that she was so important to this man. She was more important than his career and everything else in the world. Hearing him say this, her heart felt as sweet as honey. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and giggled. Mu Yaja saw that she was giggling like a cat that had stolen a fish. He couldn't help but reach out and pinch her cheeks. What are you giggling about? Little idiot. Yun Shirshir waved his hand away and said coquettishly, All right, don't be angry. I'll be more careful next time. I promise. That's more like it. Mu Yaja said, Just remember this in the future. However, even if you forgot to call me, you should have called the police immediately when there was a traffic accident. What were you thinking in that little head of yours? At that time, I saw someone fall onto the ground. It was so pitiful. I was afraid that someone would die, so I wanted to rush to the hospital. Mu Yaja was speechless. Then, I wanted to call the police, but my cell phone was knocked to the ground by them and broke. Yun Shirshir sighed as she said this. Mu Yaja was speechless. After a long silence, he sighed. Stupid woman. I think you're hopelessly stupid. Hey, no personal attacks. How am I stupid? If I were stupid, how could I have given birth to such a smart baby like Yu? Yu inherited my excellent IQ genes. As for your IQ, please refer to Shaoi Chen. Mu Yaja calmly stated the truth. Yun Shirshir. Was that really the case? Yun Shirshir sniffed her nose as if she had suffered a blow. She was obviously provoked. Mu Yaja turned around and smiled. He suddenly raised his head and rubbed her hair. But this is also good. Okay. Yun Shirshir was confused. What's good about it? Wuxia said gently. It's better if you're a little stupid. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Do you like how clumsy I am? Yes. She was even more surprised. Why? Because you'll need me more if you're a little stupid. Wuxia gently caressed her cheeks. The love and tenderness in his eyes warmed her heart even more. He liked the feeling of being relied on by her all the time. In the past, he always felt that it was better for women to be a little smarter. But that was until he met her. He liked how clumsy she was. He liked how clumsy she was. When he looked at her, a strong desire to protect her grew from the bottom of his heart. He wanted to hold her in his palms, love her, and protect her. No one could covet her. It didn't matter if she was a little stupid. He would become her entire world. Even if this world was a dog-eat-dog world, he would use his own strength to stand at the top of the strong. He would build a city for her and protect her. Yun Shirshir was touched and hugged his shoulders. Chapter 1755. So what? As Wuxia spoke, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of a scratch on her arm. His eyes darkened as he abruptly grabbed her hand and looked for her wound. He looked up and asked her, "What happened?" There were many scratches on her arm, wrist, and the back of her hand. Although the wounds weren't deep and were just scratches, it was obvious that someone had scratched them with their fingernails. Seeing this, his brows furrowed deeply. What exactly happened? How did you injure your hand? I was scratched by someone. Of course I can tell that it's a scratch. Wuxia sounded a little anxious. Who scratched you? It's those people. The police said that they were a group of scammers. When we were arguing at the hospital, they wouldn't let me go and scratched me. Wuxia's gaze instantly turned cold and his face darkened. Yun Shirshir immediately said, "It's just a scratch. It's not serious." How is the scratch not serious? What if they have germs on them? How can it be that serious? Yun Shirshir was frightened by him. You're too careless. Don't come into contact with others when you're outside. Some people have germs on them that can be infected through wounds. These words were indeed not to scare her. Wuxia held her hand and pulled her to the sofa. He took the first aid kit from the shelf and opened it. He dipped some cotton in the medicine and started to clean her wound. Yun Shirshir found it funny and helpless at the same time. This man was making a mountain out of a molehill. It was just a scratch. Why did he have to go to such lengths to apply medicine? However, she was still quite touched by his attentiveness and consideration. She sat quietly on the sofa while he knelt on one knee in front of her and carefully used the medicine to clean her wound bit by bit. Yun Shirshir was naturally very pleased to let him serve her so condescendingly. She lowered her head to look at him. From her angle, she could just catch a glimpse of his drooping eyelashes. They were thick, long, and mesmerizing. She couldn't help but reach out and catch his eyelashes. Wuxia looked up at her. What's wrong? Your eyelashes are really long. So beautiful. Yun Shirshir was in a good mood. When she smiled, she was as innocent as a child. Wuxia couldn't help but be infected by her smile. The corners of his lips couldn't help but curve into a light arc, and his mood also improved a bit. Yun Shirshir laughed at him. Eyelash fairy. Wuxia. Stupid woman. Other than these 3 words, he really didn't know what else to say. Furthermore, what did mascara spirit mean? Yun Shirshir glanced at his face and knew that he definitely didn't know what the word meant. She kindly explained, "You don't understand the trend, right? Eyelash spirit means that the eyelashes have grown into a spirit." Wuxia. After applying the medicine for her, he reminded her, "Remember not to touch the wound. There are some areas that are bleeding." Yun Shirshir glanced at him and smiled. "You're done applying the medicine? She immediately assumed a dignified posture like an emperor. "Then you may rise." Wuxia. Looking at his stern face, she really enjoyed the inexplicable sense of accomplishment when she teased him. Sometimes this man was also very cute. Chapter 1756. Good hubby. Wuxia raised his eyebrows. These 3 words were very pleasing to his ears. Originally, he was unhappy when she teased him, but because of these 3 intimate words, The corners of his lips uncontrollably curled up. He pulled her into his arms and continued the kiss that he didn't get to enjoy just now. With his lips on hers, he suddenly asked in a deep voice, "What kind of wedding gown do you like?" Ah! It was such a sudden question that she was a little stunned. "Little fool. I asked you what kind of wedding gown you like." He thought that she didn't hear him clearly, so he controlled his temper and repeated it again. "Wedding gown. Why are you suddenly asking about this? You're going to wear it when we get married." Wuxia looked at her as if she was a hopeless fool. "Why? Don't you want to wear a wedding gown? Or do you not want to marry me?" "No." Wuxia blushed and refuted. "I didn't mean that. I just think that your question is too sudden. Since I'm going to marry you, the wedding gown will naturally be indispensable. Your wedding gown needs to be custom-made in advance, so I wanted to ask you, what kind of wedding gown do you like?" Wuxia explained. "Is a custom-made one especially expensive? That's not something you should be thinking about. You just have to think about what kind of gown you like and what kind of gown looks good on you. After all, they were only going to get married once in a lifetime, so it had to be grand." He also hoped that on that day, she would wear the most beautiful wedding gown in the world and appear in front of him. Wuxia frowned. "Your question is too sudden. I haven't thought about it yet." She suddenly looked up and asked, "What about you? Do you have a wedding gown you like?" Wuxia couldn't help but laugh. "Stupid. I'm asking you. Why are you asking me instead? You're the one wearing the wedding gown, not me." Wuxia felt wronged. "That's true, but your opinion is more important. Although I'm the one wearing the wedding dress, I hope you like it." Wuxia smiled softly and teased her. "As long as you like it, I like it. I'm marrying you as a person, not a wedding dress." She didn't say anything, but her heart was filled with sweetness. "Let me think about it." In fact, she used to have many beautiful dreams for weddings. Her biggest hope was to dress up grandly and wear a beautiful wedding dress to marry the man she loved. But when the day really came, she couldn't say for a moment what style she liked. She hadn't studied it at all. There are a few types of wedding dresses. One type is Chinese, such as the qipao or the hanfu. It combines many elements of classical culture. Some are more retro and some are more modern. The other one is Western style, but there are many styles of Western style wedding dresses. They are very complicated, and you will be dazzled by them. Wuxia was stunned by his words. "You seem to know a lot about wedding dresses." "Not really, but I went out of my way to find out more." Although he said that, she knew in her heart that he was paying special attention because of her. Wuxia's ears were a little red. Chapter 1757. There are Western-style wedding gowns. Some are retro and gorgeous, some are graceful and elegant, and some are noble and elegant. The custom-made wedding gowns will all be extremely luxurious. It all depends on what you choose. But as long as you wear it, no matter what style it is, I will like it. Women were naturally picky when it came to wedding gowns. No matter which woman it was, they all hoped to be the most beautiful bride in the world on their wedding day. Wuxia was no exception. But there were very few men who paid so much attention to the details of their wedding. There were also very few men who were so patient that they would go through every style of wedding gown. She remembered one of her colleagues. When she was nearing her wedding day, she excitedly took her fiancé to the bridal shop to choose a gown. However, she tried on one gown after another. She patiently tried on a few different styles of wedding gowns and asked her fiancé to make a judgment. But in return, her fiancé looked at her impatiently. He said, "It's just a wedding. Is there a need to go through such a complicated process? The wedding gown is just a formality. It's worn during the wedding. You won't wear it again after wearing it once. Is there a need to choose so carefully?" In front of so many people, her colleague felt so wronged that her eyes turned red. They parted on the spot on bad terms. If a custom-made wedding gown is expensive, there's actually no need to do so. I think I look good in anything. What's important is that you like it, understand? Wuxia emphasized this point. There's no need to save money for me. It's only once in a lifetime. How can I let you suffer? Wuxia smiled sweetly, but she felt as sweet as honey. She wanted to say, Wuxia, how can you dote on me so much? You're going to spoil me so much that I don't know the immensity of heaven and earth and forget myself. But when the words reached her mouth, she swallowed them back down. Wasn't it a blissful thing to be doted on by someone? Hence, she said, actually, I like quite a lot of styles. I've seen a wedding dress show before, and I really like a Western-style wedding dress that incorporates classic Chinese elements. The wedding dress she had her eyes on was not a traditional Chinese dress. It was an off-shoulder wedding dress with a long hemline that reached the ground, like a charming lily in full bloom. The neckline and cuffs were designed with Chinese Sioux embroidery. It had both the elegance and romance of French and the unique charm and elegance of the East. It was very beautiful. Since you have an idea, that's good. When the time comes, I'll contact a few wedding dress designers for you. You can tell them your idea and see how they design it. After the design is done, you only need to be responsible for choosing. They were going to custom make a wedding dress for her. Yun Shirshir was so touched that she didn't know what to do. She just nodded with a silly smile. All right. At night, she sorted out the invitations that she had yet to send out. Her gaze suddenly fell on one of the more exquisite invitations. On the name of the guest, she neatly filled in the 2 words, Gong Jie. Would he come to her engagement party? She really wanted to receive his blessings. At the thought of this, Yun Shirshir picked up her cell phone and called Gong Jie. The call went through very quickly. Xiao Jie, where are you? Sis, what's the matter? Yun Shirshir said, I have something for you. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then a cold voice came through. Is it an invitation? Yes, it is. Chapter 1758. Upon hearing this, Yun Shirshir couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. She had thought that this was an excuse for him not to attend the engagement ceremony. Hence, the loneliness in her heart was reflected in her tone of voice. Xiao Jie, are you still unwilling to attend my engagement ceremony? After 15 years of separation, she cherished the sibling relationship that she had lost and regained. But at the same time, she also hoped that her happiness would be blessed by the person closest to her in the world. Gong Jie was as important to her as little Munchkin. Sis, I have something urgent to attend to in America. I just got off the plane and am not in the country. After a pause, Gong Jie continued, As for the engagement ceremony, can you give me some time to consider it? Gong Jie sounded a little helpless on the other end of the line. Yun Shirshir was stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled a little dejectedly. Xiao Jie, I won't force you or make things difficult for you. Whether you come or not, I will reserve a place for you. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. He didn't say a word, and she didn't know what he was thinking. Suddenly, Gong Jie said, Okay, got it. After hanging up the phone, Yun Shirshir sighed. Even though Gong Jie had promised her well, she didn't know if he would come on that day. Now that he was overseas, she was afraid that this meticulously prepared invitation wouldn't reach him. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips. She opened the drawer and put the invitation inside. The next day, Wuxia sent someone to send Yun Shirshir to the set and then went to the office. When Yun Shirshir returned from the set, the chauffeur sent by Wuxia sent her to the bridal gown shop. Lover, a professional custom-made gown. Even though it was just an engagement ceremony and there was no need to wear a wedding gown, this gown was still necessary. Wuxia had left the meeting early and was waiting for her in the shop. He had considered things more thoroughly, so he had arranged things very carefully. As soon as Yun Shirshir stepped into the store, she was invited into the VIP room by the manager of the dress hall. First, she was measured. After taking the measurements, the manager was surprised and exclaimed, Miss Yun, your figure is the golden ratio. A figure like yours is a classic clothes hanger. You can do any style of gown. For a moment, she could not tell if he meant what he said or if he was just being polite, so she replied politely, He, you flatter me. I'm not flattering you. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. When we make custom-made gowns, we pay the most attention to the proportion of the body. The more perfect a person's figure was, the better they looked in clothes. the fewer restrictions there are. At the side, a few shop assistants also surrounded her and took some measurements for her. For example, the size of the wrist, the size of the shoulder. The size of the shoulder lover was a famous custom-made gown shop in the capital. Many celebrities and socialites chose their gowns from this shop. The reason why they were so famous in the industry was because of 3 words: exquisite, exquisite, and exclusive. Every gown was handmade and the size were exactly the same. Even the slightest mistake of 0.1 millimeters was not allowed to happen. Hence, the gowns made by this shop never failed to fit. They were all custom-made. Chapter 1759. There was only one ready-made dress per design. Once the customer picked the dress, it would no longer be sold. Among the upper-class socialites, including the A-list celebrities in the entertainment industry, no matter if they were attending important business events or public events, walking the red carpet, or filming a blockbuster, no one would be indifferent to wearing the same dress as another person. It would be quite embarrassing. It was not scary to wear the same dress, but it would be embarrassing to see who was uglier. In order to avoid such embarrassment, everyone would want to wear the only custom-made dress. Therefore, it could be said that every dress from Lover was custom-made and one of a kind in the world. Of course, the price of the gowns in this shop was naturally not cheap. After taking measurements, Yun Shirshir walked out of the shop. She saw Mu Yaja sitting on the sofa and flipping through the album. She walked over and sat beside him to take a look. She saw that he was holding the works of Lover's top designers. Some of them were concept drawings, while others were samples that had already been made. Of course, the so-called album was different from the pictures that could be found on the internet. The concept drawings were all meticulously designed, polished, harmonized, and rendered. Every detail was vividly displayed. As for the final product, every detail, including the design of the cuffs, collar, and waist, was accurately photographed in high definition. It was for the customers to read carefully. As for the fabric, there were some samples at the end of the album so that the customers could feel the texture with their own hands and choose the material that they liked. There was a thick stack of album in front of Mu Yaja. It was very thick and very heavy. Yun Shirshir held the album in her hands. It was so heavy that she frowned. "Did you pick anything?" She looked up and asked him as she flipped through the album. Mu Yaja frowned and shook his head. He was picky and paid attention to details. Originally, he did not want to participate in the process of choosing the dress. However, she said that she hoped that he would like the dress that she wore. Since that was the case, he would personally participate in the process of choosing the dress. Since he entered the shop, he had already flipped through 3 albums. However, there were only a few designs that he liked, but he was not satisfied with any of them. Among the few models that he liked, there were also many details that he was not satisfied with. However, they weren't in a hurry. If there wasn't anything they were satisfied with, they could continue to choose. There had to be one that both of them liked. If there really wasn't any, it wouldn't be a problem to get the designer to rush out the design. After Yun Shirshir sat down, the manager led a few designers over. Yun Shirshir was not a professional when it came to choosing a wedding dress, so the manager specially brought a few designers to explain to her. Formal attire might seem simple, but when it was worn on the body, the first thing that was important was its beauty, the second was its material, and the third was its comfort. Some low-quality gowns did not fit well. Some people with sensitive skin would have an allergic reaction when they touched some low-quality fabric. A few designers flipped through the album and showed it to her and Mu Yaja as they explained it in detail. At first, Yun Shirshir only understood half of it, but later on, she gradually understood some of the details. Finally, after some discussion, the two of them decided on a set of formal attire. Chapter 1760. A red Chinese-style gown was more festive. On this point, the two of them were surprisingly in agreement. However, this gown was not a classic one. It was stylish and beautiful. Yun Shirshir took a liking to it at first glance. Mu Yaja gave the manager a deadline. As the date of the engagement was approaching, the gown had to be made as soon as possible. The manager repeatedly promised that the gown would be delivered before the engagement under the condition that the quality and quantity of the gown were guaranteed. Yun Shirshir sent out the last few invitations. Of course, Xiang Yu, Yun Qingmiao, and Xiang Yu also received an invitation. The invitations were exquisitely made, and each one was handwritten by Yun Shishir. The date and place of the engagement were written in it. It also stated that 2 nights before the engagement, Wuxia would use his private jet to bring the grooms and bride's invited guests to the island. The moment Yun Qingmiao received the invitation and saw the envelope, she was dumbfounded. Mom! Who exactly is Yun Shishir's man? He actually has his own private jet. Yun Qinli was also in disbelief. Gosh, I used to think that Yun Shishir's man could only be considered as Yin Fu, but now it seems that his identity is definitely not ordinary. He actually has his own private jet. How rich must he be to own such a thing? In their eyes, only the super-rich could afford a private jet. What they did not know was that Wuxia had a total of 5 private jets under his name. 2 of them were especially luxurious VIP jets, which were used to pick up important VIPs during business negotiations. You are one of the private jets that will be used for the engagement. Yun Qingmiao was so jealous that she could die. A few days ago, she had just seen the trailer for the movie The Green Apple on TV. At first, when she saw the beautifully edited promotional video on TV, she felt that it looked familiar. At first, she thought that it was just a coincidence. Later, the movie channel specially broadcasted the special feature and invited the director and the various main cast members to do an exclusive interview. They also edited some of the movie's highlights. When Yun Shishir appeared on the screen, her name was clearly written at the bottom of the screen. Only then did Yun Qingmiao believe that her distant cousin was actually a superstar. Yun Qingmiao was not a fan of celebrities, but Yun Qinli especially liked to watch idol dramas. Naturally, like many young girls, she especially admired Gu Xingzi. When she saw Yun Shishir and Gu Xingzi smiling as they sat together for an interview, she went into a frenzy. Yun Shishir was actually a superstar. Moreover, she and Gu Xingzi had starred in a teen movie. What's more, the main cast of this movie was a gold medal team. Not only that, when she searched for Yun Shishir's name, a few topics popped up. Surprisingly, one of them was a popular reality TV show, The Love Diary. She stayed up all night and watched all 3 episodes of the show. For 3 whole days, she could not sleep in peace. She was excited. She was excited. She was excited because she did not expect that her beloved idol would be so close to her one day. Chapter 1761. Yun Qinli especially wanted Gu Xingzi's autograph. If there was a chance, she could use Yun Shishir to get to know Gu Xingzi in person. This was something she dared not even dream of. If she could use Yun Shishir to enter the entertainment industry, would she not be able to get closer to her idol? Yun Qinli was so delusional that she did not even have the mood to look for a job. All she wanted was to find an opportunity to enter the entertainment industry. Yun Qingmiao, on the other hand, did not chase after celebrities, but unlike her sister, she harbored another thought in her heart. It turned out that Yun Shishir's fiancé was so rich. Not only was he handsome and tall, but his family background was also so superior. How exactly did Yun Shishir manage to hook up with such a perfect man? If she had such a boyfriend, she would wake up laughing even in her dreams. Xiang Yu, on the other hand, did not pay attention to these. The only thing she was concerned about was that since Yun Shishir was a celebrity and had such a rich fiancé, her family background should be extremely superior. She was focused on scheming. If she could hook up with Yun Shishir's family, given her relationship with Yun Shishir, they could be considered distant cousins. With such a rich cousin, she would not have to worry about glory and wealth for the rest of her life. In short, the 3 mother and daughter each had their own ulterior motives and different ambitions. Yun Qinli gave Yun Shishir a call and indirectly asked her how she could enter the entertainment industry and become a celebrity like her. How could Yun Shishir not understand the hidden meaning in her words? Alas, she was too busy preparing for the engagement, so she did not have the time to care about her. She gave a perfunctory reply and did not say much more. Yun Qinli was not discouraged, though. She thought to herself that she would discuss this matter with her after the engagement ceremony. She wanted to see if she could use her connections to open a back door for her to sneak into the production team and play a role. Who knew? She might become famous overnight. There was no telling. She might even become more famous than Yoon Shirshir. Yoon Chinli was so delusional that she could not settle down for a few days. The engagement ceremony was held on an island because Mu Yaja had considered many aspects before making this decision. Firstly, there was a castle on the island. After fetching the family and friends, the 2-day and 2-night celebration banquet would be relatively convenient, and there would be a private jet to shuttle them back and forth. More importantly, his wife had always dreamed of having a beach wedding. She had never mentioned these dreams but had written them down in her diary. He took a glance at it and memorized it in his heart. Although it was just an engagement ceremony, it was still a dream come true. He hoped that the engagement ceremony would be grand, but at the same time, it had a confidential atmosphere. There weren't many guests, but they were all important guests with deep connections. If they held an engagement ceremony on an island, not only would they not be disturbed, they could also ensure the safety of these guests. One had to know that many of the invitees to the engagement banquet were international politicians, even aristocrats and celebrities. They were the leaders of various countries. In 2 weeks' time, the arrangements on the island were completed. Mu Yaja had invested a lot of manpower and energy in this aspect. Chapter 1762. His personality dictated that as long as he was involved in something, he would naturally strive for perfection and strive for perfection. He did not like things with flaws, not to mention this was such an important moment in his life. He would not allow any mistakes in any part of the process. On the day of the wedding, he even sent out strict security. Even though it was on an island, he had to be alert to any possibility of an emergency. The venue was heavily guarded. Without an invitation, no one could enter. 2 nights before the engagement ceremony, Yoon Shirshir was suddenly so nervous that she could not sleep well. Mu Yaja had already flown to the island. The next day, he would send out a private jet to pick up all the guests. As for her, as the bride-to-be, another private jet would be sent to pick her up. She could not help but be curious and asked why. Mu Yaja mysteriously said, "You are my fiancé. Of course, you have to maintain a sense of mystery." Yoon Shirshir was amused by him and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Lying on the bed, she tossed and turned restlessly. Hugging the pillow, she recalled everything that had happened between her and Mu Yaja ever since they met. Every scene flooded into her mind, but it gave her the illusion that it was a lifetime ago. Fate was unpredictable. Perhaps she was born lucky to have met him and used up all her life's luck. When they first met, he was her employer. What about her? She was merely his surrogate mother. When they first met, they were still strangers. Then, she gave herself to him without any reservations. Out of helplessness, that was also the lowest point of her life. However, at that time, she did not expect that the man she was so afraid of that night would actually be her husband in the future. Fate was something that could not be explained clearly. However, fate was like this. If there was a slight mistake at every step, they could miss each other. Yoon Shirshir was sincerely grateful that they were able to come this far. The engagement ceremony was imminent. Yu Yu and Xiaoi Chen were also excited. Xiaoi Chen complained that he wanted to be the microphone, but Yu Yu rejected him. "Idiot! It's an engagement party, not a wedding. There's no need for a flower girl. Mommy is not wearing a wedding gown." When Xiaoi Chen heard this, he started chattering again. "Ah, I thought it was a wedding. When is Mommy and Daddy's wedding?" Yoon Shirshir smiled. "I haven't decided on a date yet." "Why, Xiaoi Chen, are you that impatient?" Xiaoi Chen said matter-of-factly, "Of course, all I want is to see the day Mommy marries Daddy." "Why?" "Because on that day, Mommy will definitely be very happy. I want Mommy to be happy." Xiaoi Chen's words made Yoon Shirshir's heart feel sweet again. Yu Yu said coldly from the side, "This bewitching potion is really good. Humph. Even if Mommy gets married, Mommy will still love me the most." "You're not allowed to steal my Mommy." Xiaoi Chen pouted and said, "What do you mean I can't snatch your Mommy away from you? Mommy is also mine. It's also mine." The 2 little guys did not agree and started to pinch each other again. Each of them hugged one of Yoon Shirshir's arms and acted coquettishly. Yoon Shirshir did not know what to do. but she did not know whether to laugh or cry. With 2 children at home, she really could not have a moment of peace. The next day, Mu Yaja's private jet arrived as scheduled. Yun Shirshir and the 2 little guys boarded the same jet. The other jet was specially used to pick up the guests from both parties. There was something that had to be mentioned. Chapter 1763. His consideration was that the guests invited by the man were all wealthy and respectable. He was afraid that the mother-daughter trio would say something inappropriate regardless of the occasion, which would embarrass everyone in public and embarrass them. He did not want to ruin Yun Shirshir's important moment at such an important occasion. However, he still invited them. If he did not invite them, it would not be right. If word got out, people would gossip. In the end, it was Mu Yaja who spoke. It was not a problem to invite them. At most, they would be separated from some important guests in 2 cabins. During the engagement party, they would be arranged as far away as possible. Mu Yaja also knew that Xiang Yu and her daughter were not good people. They did not know how to control their words. But if he did not invite them, it would not be right. Hence, he made such arrangements. Yun Shirshir invited a few friends. Among them, those who were on good terms with her colleagues were invited. Xiao Shui, who was her best friend and future bridesmaid, was also invited. As for Zhang Li, she was the only one who was invited among all her classmates. The rest of them were all close friends of his. When it was time to board the plane, Xiao Shui was used to such situations, so she remained calm. Zhang Li, on the other hand, was completely shocked. When she was traveling, she had also taken a plane, but she had never been on such a luxurious plane. The solid wood seats, the luxurious decor, and the luxurious furnishings in the cabin all showed the style of a noble. She even dared not sit down. More importantly, the guests invited by the groom were all dignified. Some of them had even been seen on important international news. They seemed to be very influential. There were bodyguards wearing sunglasses 3 meters away from them. They did not allow outsiders to get close. What was even more surprising was that a few politicians from a certain country were also invited. A few international politicians and members of a certain country's royal family, as well as the Prime Minister and President of Country X, were allocated to the VIP cabin. The important politicians and celebrities sat in a suite. Yun Shirshir's guests sat in the same cabin as some business celebrities. Even so, Zhang Li still felt quite pressured. Most of the guests who were sitting in the same cabin were people with great backgrounds, and their names could be called out. Even if he hadn't appeared on TV, there were special introductions in some financial newspapers. One of them seemed to be the CEO of a large corporation. All the famous people on the Forbes list were among them. Sitting among them, she could not help but feel the aura of these big shots in the business world. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on her. It was so oppressive that she could not breathe. Even if she was just casually drinking some tea, she had to pretend to be a lady in order to feel that she could adapt to such a scene. But at the same time, he felt that she was imitating others and making a fool of herself. It was neither fish nor fowl. In short, no matter what she did, she felt out of place with the nobles of this class. The huge difference between them made her unable to adapt quickly. When a person was in a high position, their temperament would be completely different from ordinary people. Moreover, these big shots at the pinnacle all had extraordinary backgrounds and were especially noble. Zhang Li resisted the urge to scream and sat in the same place, trembling with fear. She held Xiao Shui's hand tightly. She had not seen Xiao Shui for a long time. The reason she was invited this time was because they were classmates. After all, they had been classmates for 4 years. Zhang Li had been good to Yun Shirshir, and Yun Shirshir was grateful to her. Therefore, she made an exception and invited her from among her classmates. Chapter 1764. Due to that class reunion, everyone had parted on bad terms. She thought that her relationship with Yun Shirshir would end just like that. When Zhang Li received her invitation, she was more touched than surprised. She then seriously prepared a 4-digit red packet. This was already considered a decent amount among the commoners. However, compared to Mu Yaja's guests, it was not even worth a mention. To put it bluntly, A private jet flight to a private island for a vacation was not even worth this bit of money. She could not help feeling guilty at first, but when Xiao Shui found out about it, she said, "It's fine as long as you have the intention. Will Shershur care about this bit of money?" Only then did she feel more at ease. Of course, she still knew her limits and knew to save some face for Yun Shershur. Even though she was shocked, she still pretended to be calm in the face of such an occasion. Yun Yeqing and Yun Yeho were dressed especially well for the engagement ceremony. They had prepared 2 suits, but when they boarded the plane and saw the various celebrities in the cabin, they could not help but feel a little oppressed. This feeling was indescribable. It could only be said that their status was still in a different world from Mu Yaja's social circle. Because of this, he could not help but feel worried for Yun Shershur. Since ancient times, marriage was about matching the social status of the 2 families. Of course, it did not mean that the 2 families had to be of the same status, but at the very least it could not be so different. One was a commoner while the other was from the upper class. The difference between them could not be summed up in a few words. He was afraid that Yun Shershur would inevitably suffer after marrying into the Mu family. Most of the rich and powerful would not fancy Yun Shershur's family background. This was what he was most worried about. In the end, due to his nervousness, Yun Yeqing had no choice but to bring his younger brother to the same cabin as Xiang Yu and her daughter. The moment Xiang Yu saw Yun Yeqing, she hurriedly pulled him to the side and said, "Brother Cheng, you're here. You're being a little unkind in this matter. How could your daughter be so capable to hook you up with such a rich husband? You've been hiding it from us all this time." Yun Yeqing was stunned. Xiang Yu couldn't help but ask, "What is the background of Shershur's fiancé? From the looks of it, they've even sent out a private jet. You must have a lot of money, right?" Yun Yeqing knitted his brows in disgust at her question. "I don't care about Shershur's fiancé's family background. I only care about whether he loves Shershur, whether he dotes on Shershur, and whether he treats Shershur well. I don't care about anything else." "How can this be?" But Xiang Yu didn't agree. "He is your son-in-law. You don't even know him well. Why do you care about him?" Then she guessed mysteriously, "I think his background is not simple. How could he afford such a luxurious private jet if he wasn't a billionaire?" "Brother Cheng, if you ask me, Shershur is really not bad at all. With her finding such a rich husband for you, you won't have to worry about your wealth in the future." Chapter 1765. Yun Yeqing gave her a lukewarm smile and glanced at her expressionlessly. "I don't care about these things. Shershur being able to find a man who loves her and their children being able to spend the rest of their lives together is the most important thing. Everything else, be it rich or poor, is secondary." "Sai, look at you. You have the life of luxury. So why are you so unappreciative?" She was exasperated at his failure to live up to her expectations. Yun Qingmiao, who was curious, also came forward and inquired, "Uncle, Shershur is really lucky. She can find such a handsome and rich husband. One can't be too worldly when looking at things and people. When 2 people are together, the most important thing is their feelings. Other material conditions are not important at all." Yun Yeqing did not take this matter seriously. He had never thought of the glory and wealth he could enjoy in the future if Yun Shershur and Mu Yaja were together. To put it bluntly, if Yun Shershur led a good life, he was willing to work harder for the rest of his life. That was what he really thought, and that was what he did. After returning to the capital, he immediately found a job to take care of Yun Yeho while working. While he still had some stamina, he could work a job and earn some money to reduce her burden. Alas, neither Xiang Yu nor Yun Qingmiao thought the same. To them, his words sounded a little pompous. Yun Qingmiao smiled and said, "Uncle, what are you saying? If her fiancé isn't rich, will Shershur still fancy him? Isn't she with him so that she can have a better life in the future? If she marries such a rich man, she can live a comfortable and carefree life as a rich madam for the rest of her life. She doesn't have to work or earn money as she has a husband to support her. As long as she works hard to give birth to his children, her life in the future will be very comfortable." Xiang Yu also sighed at the side. "That's right. Shershur's good fortune was not something that could be obtained through envy. If possible, let Qingmiao and Qinli visit Shershur and learn from her. In the future, they can also find me 2 rich husbands. That would be great. At this point, Yun Yeqing did not want to talk to them anymore. Some things can't be asked for. After a pause, he reminded them again. Xiangyu, Qingmiao, Qinli, there are a lot of influential people at this engagement ceremony. When the time comes, remember not to speak carelessly. Be careful with your words and actions, and at least know your limits when you speak. Hearing this, Xiangyu's expression changed, and displeasure appeared in her eyes. Ah, Brother Cheng, what are you talking about? Shershur just got engaged, and you're already setting up the rules. What, are you afraid that the 3 of us will embarrass Shershur? Don't you think it's inappropriate to say that? Yun Yeqing thought in dissatisfaction. It's precisely because the 3 of them are unreliable in their words and actions. Otherwise, why would I give them such advice? Xiangyu only took it that he was being arrogant in front of them. His daughter had married into a rich family, yet he was starting to despise them for being poor and lacking in class. It was just marrying into a rich family. Did he have to be so lofty in his words? His pretense was quite impressive. Wasn't he just afraid that they would embarrass themselves in public? Did he have to speak like this? Chapter 1766. Sigh. I'm just worried. To be honest, most of the guests invited by the groom this time are people of status. I don't dare to speak carelessly for fear of being laughed at, so just keep your mouth shut when the time comes. Unwillingly, Xiangyu agreed. However, she had another thought in mind. Once Yun Yeqing was gone, she immediately whispered to Yun Qingmiao, "Did you hear that? All the guests this time are people of status. Aren't you going to let me seize this opportunity?" Although Yun Qingmiao pretended to be calm on the surface, she could not hide the excitement in her heart. She held her mother's hand tightly, clearly at a loss for what to do. "Mom, in that case, are all the people who came to the wedding banquet this time influential people?" Her mother snorted. "What do you think? Most of them are either rich or powerful. Didn't you hear what your uncle said earlier? He said that many of the guests at this engagement party are people of status and influence. Shershur's fiancé is so influential that he even owns several private jets. How can the guests he invited be third-rate people?" Yun Qingmiao was elated to hear that, but she was full of expectations for the upcoming engagement party. She longed to meet a person of status and power like Wuxia. He was tall, handsome, and powerful. Most importantly, he seemed to have inexhaustible wealth. Perhaps it was because he was used to living a hard life. He had never enjoyed a good life since he was young. When he was young, he went to work in the factory. In the electronics factory, day after day, year after year, he worked 12 hours a day and only had 2 days of rest a month. Yet, he could only earn a salary of a little more than 3,000 yuan. At first, she was quite satisfied with this salary. 3,000 yuan was considered a good income in the countryside. However, there was no harm in comparison. When she followed her mother into this bustling metropolis, she saw real estate with an average price of tens of thousands, luxury cars that easily cost hundreds of thousands, mobile phones that cost a few thousand, luxury goods that cost tens of thousands, bags, lipsticks, cosmetics. To her, almost everything was full of impactful temptation. She suddenly felt that a monthly salary of 3,000 yuan was nothing. Living in such a huge international city, even if it was only a few tens of thousands of yuan, it might be difficult to make ends meet in a month. But if she could marry a rich husband, that would be a different story. She could also afford to drive a luxury car, live in a villa, buy Hermes bags that cost hundreds of thousands, and buy high-end cosmetics. She could walk through the bustling department stores and buy whatever she liked without hesitation. She yearned for such a carefree life. Therefore, she was extremely envious of Yun Shershur. However, it was important to know one's own limitations. Yun Qingmiao was well aware that her looks could not compare to Yun Shershur's. Perhaps it was hard to meet a man as noble as Wuxia, but she did not have to be too handsome or tall. As long as he had money, power, and could satisfy her material needs, that was enough. Speaking of which, this was all thanks to Yun Shershur. If she had not been invited to her engagement party, she might not have had such an occasion and opportunity to try her luck. Chapter 1767. After she arrived in the capital, she caught up with the latest trends. She used communication devices and even learned how to use Weibo. She followed Gu Xing's account on Weibo and saw a lot of intimate interactions between him and Yun Shishir. She was very excited. It seemed that the two of them had a good relationship. While she was jealous, she was also looking forward to seeing if Gu Xingze would attend the engagement party. If he did, she wanted to sit next to him. Even if she could only look at him from a close distance, she would be very satisfied. Of course, these were just wishful thinking. If he did not show up, then she would only be disappointed. However, Yun Qinli was destined to be disappointed this time. Yun Shishir did not invite Gu Xingze. Actually, she had wanted to invite Gu Xingze, but she gave up the idea after considering Mu Yaja's feelings. If he didn't like someone, she would consider his feelings and keep a little distance. Yun Shishir's plane arrived at the island first. After the plane landed on the tarmac, bodyguards escorted her all the way to the castle. However, the interesting thing was that after she got into the car, the bodyguard covered her eyes. While she was feeling uneasy and suspicious, the bodyguard said that it was the boss's idea. The boss was probably referring to Mu Yaja. What was this guy trying to do by pretending to be mysterious? Yun Shishir was puzzled, but she did not say anything and allowed them to cover her eyes. When she got out of the car, she was carefully led into the castle. Just as she entered the castle, the crisp sound of high heels hitting the marble floor reminded her of where she was. "Can I take it off now?" she asked softly. She could not see anything in front of her, and this made her feel very uneasy. The cold and respectful voice beside her said, "Sorry, please wait for a moment. Follow me upstairs." Suddenly, he reminded her, "Be careful of the stairs." With the help of the bodyguards, she was led all the way to the 4th floor. In a daze, she did not know how many flights of stairs she had taken. Finally, she stopped in front of a door. After the bodyguard sent her into the room, he quietly retreated, closed the door, and left. Yun Shishir waved her hands in the air for a long time before she took off the blindfold in a daze. However, when she opened her eyes, she was instantly mesmerized by the luxurious and elegant decor in front of her. Inside the huge room, the ceiling was more than 5 meters high. As far as the eye could see, the richly ornamented beams and painted rafters were luxurious and elegant. The unique retro and luxurious style of European medieval royalty was fully reflected. There were bright floor-to-ceiling windows and an arched door decorated with holy flowers. Past the arched door was the bedroom. There was a princess bed that was 2 meters wide and 3 meters long. The pink curtains were gently swaying, half closed. Above her head, there was a complicated and beautiful crystal chandelier, elegant and beautiful paintings, an exquisite dressing table, and a high-quality solid wood wardrobe, all of which were luxurious. Everything in front of him was something that could only be seen in movies. But now, it was happening right before his eyes. She still remembered a fairy tale movie she had watched when she was young. The female lead was a royal princess who lived carefree in a dreamy castle manor. Every day, she would wake up in a luxurious princess room like the one in front of her. This was the princess room of her dreams. This was the real princess room. Chapter 1768. Yun Shishir was pleasantly surprised as she walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Through the clear window, she could see the vast blue ocean, the spotlessly white beach, and the seagulls circling around in the air. The tender green lawn had already been decorated. From this position, she could see the back garden of the castle. The fresh flowers were in full bloom, and it was a beautiful sight to behold. This wasn't the first time she had come to this castle, but the scenery that she saw the previous time was completely different from this time. It looked like a certain man had put in a lot of effort to redecorate the castle according to her dreams. It was too beautiful. It was really too beautiful. If she could, she really wanted to live here for the rest of her life. How blissful would that be? She loved the boundless blue ocean and spotlessly white beach the most. This was the fairy tale wonderland of her dreams. Yun Shishir clutched her chest as her heart was beating like thunder. Everything in front of her gave her a huge surprise. A pair of arms suddenly hugged her from behind. Following that, she was pulled into an embrace from behind by a strong arm. The man's unique magnetic voice was close to her ear as it sounded, "Do you like it?" Yun Shirshir raised her head abruptly and met with Mu Yaja's deep and charming eyes. She smiled, but it looked like she was crying yet not laughing. "I like it. I like it so much." Yun Shirshir turned her head back to look out of the window, but she still couldn't regain her senses. "Did you prepare these for me?" She found it hard to believe and felt as if she was in a dream. Mu Yaja, however, rubbed her nose affectionately. "Who else could it be?" "You." Yun Shirshir was touched by his meticulousness once again. This man, how could he be so meticulous? Also, was he a roundworm in her stomach? Why was it that he always seemed to be able to guess what she was thinking? How did he do it? "It's good that you like it." Mu Yaja saw the corners of her lips curled upwards, and he couldn't help but reveal a gratified smile. Earlier on, he was even a little nervous. He, who had always been the one to decide life and death in the midst of bloody storms, was actually a little nervous at this moment. He was secretly angry at himself, but at the same time he was careful, afraid that she would not like it at all. Now, seeing the yearning in her eyes that she didn't hide at all, his heart finally calmed down. Yun Shirshir was about to say something when someone knocked on the door. Mu Yaja said, "Come in." The door was opened from the outside and several elegantly dressed designers walked in with a set of gowns. "Chairman Mu, the gown is here. Would you like Miss Yun to try it on?" that person asked. Mu Yaja looked at her. "Give it a try?" "Yes." "Miss Yun, please try it on. If there's anything you're not satisfied with, we'll immediately send someone to rectify it overnight." Yun Shirshir nodded and cooperated. "Okay." Several designers sent Yun Shirshir into the cloakroom, drew the curtains, and tried on the clothes for her. Mu Yaja was waiting on the sofa outside. After changing into the gown, it took a long time for styling. A beautiful gown naturally had to be matched with beautiful makeup to look even more outstanding. However, he also waited patiently. Although the time spent waiting was long, it was also comfortable. He even had a bit of anticipation in his heart. Chapter 1769. At this moment it was already dusk. Beautiful rays of sunlight shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows and fell on her body. Her long gown seemed to be plated with a faint layer of gold, emitting a holy light, exquisite and beautiful. This gown was a combination of Chinese and Western fashion elements. The skirt was a floor-to-ceiling long dress with a long hemline. The collar and sleeves were the most beautiful elements of Han Chinese clothing, especially the Su embroidery. It was classical and elegant, adding a thick stroke of color to this gown. The gown used a gradual change of color. From the collar to the hemline, it went from light to dark. At first glance, it was like a fairy condensed from roses, magnificent and noble. The neckline was designed with an off-shoulder design and exquisite Suzhou embroidery. Every stitch was flawless, especially the embroidery on the neckline. Even if one were to zoom in and look at it carefully, one would still be amazed by how exquisite it was. This was simply a masterpiece. It was designed by a famous designer and handmade. It was definitely not empty talk. Not to mention Yun Shirshir's devilish figure, which was perfectly reflected in this gown. The unique design on the chest at first glance was like a design made of peonies. It set off the two sections of her exquisite collarbones that were like jade. Those round and fair shoulders also showed off her ample bosom, but it was not overly revealing. It looked elegant and charming, noble and proper. At first glance, it looked like a proud peony. Her thick hair was meticulously coiled up. Even if there were no decorations, it was draped over her shoulders. There was no need for too much adornment, but it still gave off an unruly beauty. Her previous image was like the pure and beautiful style in The Green Apple, and the antique beauty in Lethal Beauty. She had never been as domineering as she was today. It turned out that her beauty could also be so flamboyant. Mu Yaja's gaze suddenly fell on her face. Her small face had been carefully sculpted by the stylist and was delicately painted with makeup. Yun Shirshir was originally a natural beauty. Even without any makeup, she had a face that people could not bear to look away from. At this moment, after the makeup, her beauty had a unique dark color. The gown was designed in Han Chinese. The makeup was also designed to match the design of the gown, using the crystal peach blossom makeup. The stylist did not go with the trend. Instead, he used a combination of Chinese and Korean makeup. Her curved willow-like eyebrows were slightly smooth, and light brown eyebrow powder that outlined her eyebrows, thick and curly long. Even if she said that she envied Mu Yaja's eyelashes, her eyelashes thick and curly and long. Even if she said that she envied Mu Yaja eyelashes, her eyelashes thick and long eyelashes. Was thick and curly long, her eyelashes were thick and long.